Da, 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 da. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this fourth Bond reflection. Woohoo! Yes, this today we are reflecting on Timothy Dalton. Yes, the fourth actor to play James Bond in the official 007 series and his era, which consists of not one but two movies. Woohoo! So it's a longer
Wow.
era than George Lazenby. So yippee! Uh, so we're going to be talking about both his films in the franchise, The Living Daylights and License to Kill, and our thoughts and our verdicts. Again, this is just our personal opinion, so if you disagree, that's fine, but please be polite about it in the comments down below, and we'll have a good discussion. So, yeah, last time we did Roger Moore, and that was quite a mouthful, 7 films, so it's nice to kind of have a shorter era this time. And obviously, Dalton was taking the series in a slightly different direction, let's just say. So I think I will kick this off by passing the virtual microphone over to Jack. Jack, please give us your verdict on The Living Daylights.
Well, the Living Daylights, the beginning of the Timothy Dalton
Era.
duology. Yeah,
Is it an era, really?
yeah. And it's kind of funny how Timothy Dalton got cast because originally they wanted Pierce Brosnan for the role, but he was doing Remington Steele, and I think he was about to finish the show, and then they given him the contract for Bond, but because Remington Steele had like a clause in Brosnan's contract, he was kept on, and they did a couple more TV movies. So they decided instead to go for Timothy Dalton, who was actually one of their choices back when George Lazenby was originally going to be Bond. They wanted to offer it to Timothy Dalton, but I think Dalton was in his 20s, and I
Yeah,
think he's in his mid 20s. Yeah, he thought he was too young, which I agreed with. And they went for Lazenby, is probably too young as well. But yeah, so they gave him the role here, and Timothy Dalton, he's a very fine Shakespearean actor. So in some ways, it's a little bit strange to have a Shakespearean actor play James Bond. But
Look, can we say that Timothy Dalton is the most eloquent James Bond in the way he speaks? He talks with a very posh accent.
yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah. Um, and of course he's a Welsh actor as well, so he's sort of got that sort of Welsh
Yeah.
tone to his voice a bit. But no, I mean I think he was a good casting choice, and it's interesting that when he was cast, he wanted to go back to more the roots of Ian Fleming's Bond. Like he read the books, and I think Dalton was really the first Bond to capture Bond from the books. I think Timothy Dalton and Daniel Craig are probably the most accurate Bonds to the book. And Timothy Dalton, he did his homework. He read the novels, and he wanted to go back to sort of the roots of Bond with Ian Fleming and sort of Sean Connery. And we got him in The Living Daylights, and I think he's really great in The Living Daylights. And the way the film begins, I think, is great. Where you got Bond and these other guys, and they're on this training mission in Gibraltar, and it's a really great way to introduce the character of Bond here. That you got these agents being killed off. There's that one guy who's got smeared spionum on his rope, and then he gets a cut. And we just see Bond turning around as he sees the guy fall off the cliff, and it's a great way to introduce Bond. And what's interesting about The Living Daylights is that it's very different to some of the previous Bond films, like from sort of the 70s onwards, from like Diamonds Are Forever onwards, we sort of had more of a campy tone, more of a humorous tone to the Bond films, except for maybe For Your Eyes Only. And this is sort of the
Wait,
a
For Your
return
Eyes
to.
Only. What tone did that movie have?
Well, I was trying to go back to a more serious tone, but yeah.
Because I thought it was trying to be campy as well. Well, it was doing both, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, this film sort of goes back to the roots of Ian Fleming's Bond, and this is probably it's the most serious Bond film we've had in quite a while, and I think Timothy Dalton here is really excellent as Bond. He sort of brings out that sort of cool killer of Bond, which I really like. And that opening is great, where he's chasing after the guy who killed one of the MI6 agents, and he's on top of the Jeep, and it's going down the mountain. And what's incredible about that as well is that Timothy Dalton actually did that stunt. He was he decided that he was going to be on top of the roof and he was going to be holding on. And as this truck was barreling down the road, and it's a great sequence. It really is a fantastic sequence. We see he parachutes out and the guy blows up and he lands on this boat. And I do like that scene where she's like, "Oh, if only I could find a real man." And then he's like, "Oh, she'll call you back. She'll call you back later." And then,
Isn't it
she
just too
says,
convenient though that she's there on the boat when Dalton lands there? I suppose that's trying to go back, trying to be a little bit of tongue in cheek, but not too much.
"Yeah, I mean, it is a bit convenient, but at the same time, it's Bond. So I mean, we see more ridiculous things in Bond than that. But yeah, I do like the bit where she says, "Oh, won't you join me?" And he's like, "Oh, she'll call you back in an hour. I'll better make that 2." And then you cut to the title sequence and the theme. And I think the title sequence by Morris Binder, it's not great. I mean, it's not the worst title sequence he's done, but it's not very imaginative. I think he was sort of running out of ideas by this point. He would only do one more title sequence after this. It's License to Kill before he would retire from the series. But it's not a great title sequence. Like the woman in the champagne glass is a little bit weird, and the song "Living Daylights" by Aha. And Aha is probably most famous for doing that song. "Take on Me," and never been the biggest fan of Aha. And their song here, it's nothing special. It's not one of the best Bond themes, but yeah, it's all
Would you
right.
say
But
it's better than the last like 3 or 4 themes? Like since Moonraker, like you've got Moonraker, For Your Eyes Only, All Time High, View to a Kill. Would you say the Living Daylight song is better than those, or not really?
Not really. I mean, I'd rather take the Moonraker song over this, to be honest. I've just never been a biggest fan of Aha, and it's just a very forgettable song. I think
I
comes the
think the problem
morning
is
and the
probably,
headlights fade
sorry to
away.
interrupt. I
Yeah.
think the problem is, like you say, they're forcing the lyrics, the living daylights, into a song. It just doesn't make sense. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the issue with a lot of the songs in the 80s. The lyrics don't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. The lyrics don't make sense. Comes the morning and the headlights fade away. Like, it's just
It is
it just
catchy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's catchy, but I mean, catchy doesn't necessarily mean it's a good song. But yeah, I think that's my problem with the majority of the songs in the '80s is that they're very forgettable. Not the best, to be honest. But um, yeah, but once you get past that, I really do like all the stuff with Bonds and I think it's Saunders, and he's very good in this film, and I really like the sort of Cold War thriller, spy thriller stuff they're going for here, and I think they've got the right balance between dark stuff and they do have humorous moments in here as well. Not a huge amount of humorous moments, not as much as the Roger Moore Bond films, but they have that sort of right balance of dark, gritty spy thriller, espionage stuff with the occasional funny one-liner put in there. But no, but I mean, I like that whole section where you got a Kara played by Mariam Dabo, and she's very good in this. And Mariam Dabo, I think she's probably the most beautiful Bond girl, not the most sexy, but probably the most beautiful. And and I do like the scene where, well, you go. We'll get to that whistle thing later on that activates that explosive, but I do like that whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there is a funny there is a good section there where Bonds with Saunders, and Saunders like it's sort of like he's a bit up his arse, he's like, "Oh, Bond, you're late," and all this, and then we see that Kara's got the sniper, and Bond decides to shoot the sniper out of her arms, instead of killing her, and then we find out that Koskov says, "Oh, it's a KGB sniper." And and then you see Saunders. He's like, "Oh, you forgot about the orders." He's like, "Stuff my orders." And I do like the section. I do like the bit later on where he gets in the car and he's like, "Oh, Bond, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, sorry, old man. Section 3, paragraph 4. Need to know. Sure, you understand." That's a great way to sort of start the film off. And speaking of the film, I think my only weakness with this film is the villains. I do think Georgy Koskov, played by Jerome Krabby, is a bit of a, he's just a bit like, "Oh, James, hello, James." He's just very jovial and
Your own crab.
yeah, yeah. I mean, hope he didn't have crabs, but yeah, yeah. Yeah, Jerome Crab. I just find him very, very jovial. He's like, "Oh, James," like in the way he's kissing Bond on the cheek at one point. And all that.
I told you.
Told you. Yeah, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Pushkin is, how should we say, needs to be put away," and stuff like that. He's just not very threatening. And then you got the other villain in this, Brad Whitaker, played by Joe Don Baker. And I think out of the two villains, he's the better one, but he's still not a very good villain. He's just sort of this arms dealer who's obsessed with, Napoleon and, toy soldiers and all this stuff. And I mean, I do think out of the two roles Joe Don Baker played, this is much better than Jack Wade, but at the same time, yeah, he's barely in it, and he's just sort of a generic arms dealer. So I think if I was to give this, film one weakness, it would be that. But apart from that, I think it's a very good film. You got some pretty good scenes in here. I like that whole scene where you got Necros and he kills that milkman with his headphones, and then he comes into the MI6 headquarters and he's throwing milk bottles around, they're exploding, and there's that really great fight that he has with one of the MI6 agents in the kitchen, and it's a really brutal fight. Love that sequence. It's kind of interesting the plot of this film, because the plot of this is very. One thing I will say about The Living Daylights is the plot of this one is quite difficult to follow. It takes a while to sort of wrap your head around everything that's going on in this, because you've got stuff with heroin, you've got stuff with
Opium.
Afghanistan, opium. You got the Mujahideen. You got like arms dealing stuff. So maybe that's one of the other like criticisms I will give. This is maybe like the plotting here can be like the plot of this sometimes can be a bit confusing, and I think I'm not the only one to point that out. I think Alan's pointed out and a few others that you really have to pay attention when you're watching this film. I guess it's a bit like Tenant.
Would you still say though? Would you still say that it's still thrilling to watch, even though the plot is a bit overcomplicated?
Oh no, yeah, no, it's definitely thrilling to watch, and that's one of the things I really admire that John Glen did with this film, like with his direction. He really wanted to get back to the sort of roots of Bondy and Fleming stuff, the early Connery films, and you do get a sense of that, like that this is more of an espionage thriller. And when I first saw this, I remember I first saw this like 8 years ago back on Sky Movies when they were showing they had that James Bond channel on Sky Movies, and they were showing this, and I think that was the first time I watched it, and I sat down and I watched it with my granny, and I was blown away by it when I first saw it. Like, it was definitely one of my favorite Bond films, and I still think it is. It's definitely in my top 10. Probably towards the bottom half of the top 10, but still a very good film. And
towards the top half of the Timothy Dalton era.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into License to Kill soon. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great action scenes in here. I love that whole action scene where Bond's in his Aston Martin, and he's with Kara, and they're setting up roadblocks, and he uses the missiles in his car, and I like that bit where he cuts the guys that Russian police car in half, and he's like, "Oh, salt corrosion," that was quite funny. So yeah, I mean, you've got all that great stuff there. That whole action scene is amazing, where he's driving the Aston Martin on the ice, and he goes into that. What was it? He goes into that hut or whatever it is, and he's driving it around on the ice, and the Russian army's after him, and then he gets away in the cello case. It's just a fantastic action sequence, and it's just really well done. And one thing I say I like about Living Daylights as well is the relationship between Bond and Kara. I mean, this was during the late 80s, so there was a bit of an AIDS scare at the time. So you'll notice in the Timothy Dalton era that Bond doesn't really have sex with the girls as much as he did during the Roger Moore era or the Sean Connery era. Um, and I kind of like his relationship with Kara, like how at first, she's sort of naive. She doesn't know who Georgi Koskov really is. Georgi's lying to her and all this. And then we later find out that, Georgi wanted her dead. And that's why, Bond was, the sniper. But, I think her relationship with Bond's really good. Like when they first meet each other. And then later on, when they're in Afghanistan, she calls him like a horse's arse in Russian, which is quite funny. But I like the bit where Bond says to her, high star, it means beautiful in Afghan. And yeah, I do really like Bond and Kara's relationship. And I think Kara's one of my favorite Bond girls because she is sort of this, naive person. And then I think she falls in love with Bond, throughout the film. I mean, maybe Bond doesn't quite fall for her, but, she definitely falls for Bond. And I do like her
Cares for
relationship.
her though. You definitely get
Yeah.
that he does grow to care for her.
Yeah. But I mean, I do like her, relationship with Bond. Like, yeah, that she at first she doesn't trust him, and then slowly over the course of the film, she trusts him. I also have to talk about John Rhys Davies as Pushkin. I think he's really good in this film, and one of my favorite scenes, probably my favorite scene in the whole film, is where Bond interrogates him, and Timothy Dalton really sells it in that scene where he throws him on the bed and he's like, "Oh, you're a professional. You don't kill without reason." And he's like, "Yeah, correct. You should have brought lilies." That was quite funny. Um, and you actually get a bit of nudity there. I think. You see a bit of nipple there when he like rips off Pushkin's girlfriend's clothes and distracts the guard. And he's like, "Oh, that was a damn stupid thing to do," when he alerts the guards. But yeah, I mean, you've got some great action here. Like I like that, chase on the rooftop in Morocco. That's really great. And then later on, when Bond, pretends to kill Pushkin, that's a great sequence. Um, so yeah, the action here is really good. One thing I will say is I think the best villain in this is the henchman, is Necros. I think the actor who plays him does a really good job. He's very threatening. Like I said, he kills people with his headphones, which is quite funny. And he's listening to that song, "Where has everybody gone?" I like that. That was quite good. But yeah, there's some other nice scenes here as well. I like the whole scene where Bond's on the Ferris wheel and he says to Cara, "Don't think, just let it happen." That was quite a nice scene where they sort of kiss. And then later on, when he's in the cafe with Saunders, and Saunders gives him, information, and we see Saunders isn't, the arsehole that we thought he was. And I mean, one thing I will say is I was genuinely, I didn't want Saunders to die. There's that sequence where Necro sets up the door to like hit him at the specific time and kill him. And yeah, I didn't want Saunders to die, but yeah, typical John Glenn flashing. All of Bond's allies have to die in every film he does. Ferrara in Luigi Ferrara in For Your Eyes Only, VJ in Octopussy, Tibbet in A View to a Kill, Saunders in Living Daylights, and yeah, Sharky in License to Kill. But I did like that sequence with Bond. He sees the balloon, it says Spionum, and he pops it and he jumps over the fence because he sees these balloons, and he gets his gun out. And I like how Kara she thinks that they're going to see Yorgi and all that, and then I like the sequence afterwards where he goes to see Kara, and she gives him chloral hydrate, and he rips her sleeve off, and he finds that she still has the mark, and he tells her that you got the mark from me because I tried to shoot the sniper out of your hand. And she thinks that Bond's a KGB agent. And then you sort of get to the finale of the film, where you have that pretty cool fight in the prison with Bond and Kara. They take out the guards. I thought that was a pretty good fight. Where he's whistling into it, and I forgot to mention I like the Q scene in this, like the scene where he's like, oh, he's got that radio that shoots a rocket. He's like, oh, it's the latest thing from the Americans. It's called a ghetto blaster, and that was funny. And yeah, you got that gadget that he gives Bond, which you whistle, it sort of detonates this bomb. But I mean, saying that, I wasn't a fan of Caroline Bliss in this film as Moneypenny. She was okay. She did a decent job, but I just don't really think she has that much chemistry with Dalton. And I don't think Caroline Bliss is that particularly attractive, unlike Lois Maxwell back in the early days. But yeah, that whole fight sequence is good, but I like the bit afterwards where Kara says to Bondo, "We're free," and he says, "Oh, Kara, we're in a Russian airbase in the middle of Afghanistan." and, they get away, and it turns out that the Mujahideen guy, I think he was educated in Oxford, but I mean, I like all the scenes of the Mujahideen, and I think the ending of the film is quite good, where you got Koskov on the plane, and they've got this animal's heart, and there's like diamonds around it. So they're smuggling in these diamonds in the ice, which I thought was quite interesting, and they're selling the arms to the Mujahideen. So I mean, I think you need to watch this film a couple of times to understand everything that's going on, but I think they did that deliberately. They wanted to make it a more complicated plot because they wanted you to invest in this more. It's kind of like Tenet. You probably need to watch it more than once to understand everything that's going on. But I really do like the final action sequence, where Kara, goes after Bond, and they're on the, horses, and it's a really terrific action sequence. The final fight on the, Russian airbase, and you have a great bit where Koskov, the plane collides with him and it blows up his jeep, but suddenly, he's still alive. But you got a great action sequence where Bond, he's on the plane, he's trying to get rid of the opium, and we see the Necros is there, and they're hanging from the net, and they're fighting each other. Bond's trying to climb up the net and get back into the plane, and it's great they actually got stuntmen to do that, and I love that sequence where Bond, he cuts his laces off with the knife, and Necros falls from the plane, and I do like the line afterwards where Kara says, "Oh, where is he?" And he's like, "Oh, he got the boot," which is quite funny. But yeah, and then we see they just narrowly avoid, blowing up the. Getting blown up at the mountainside, and then we see they run out of fuel. And I do like the bit afterwards where Bond's in the Jeep, which has a parachute, and he says, "Oh, I know a nice restaurant in Karachi." And I do think maybe the final battle of Whitaker is a little bit anticlimactic, where Bond confronts him, and then we see Whitaker's there, and he uses the whistle bomb, and he whistles Royal Britannia, and it kills him. And, and we see that, I think it's Nelson that he's hiding behind, or whatever. But I mean, that was pretty good. I do like the bit afterwards where you got Pushkin and he's with uh, um, Koskov, and he says to him, "Oh, taking my way in a flight in a body bag." That's quite good. And I did like the ending with Kara, where she's doing her cello stuff, and then you got General Gogol appearing as a brief cameo. And funnily enough, General Gogol, the actor who played him, was going to be the main character in this instead of Pushkin, which was maybe a bit of a missed opportunity. But I still think John Rhys-Davies is great as Pushkin. And I do like the ending where, she thinks Bond has left him, and then you got Timothy Dalton there, and, he's like, "Oh, you didn't think I missed this performance?" And, that was a nice way to end the film, although I don't like the song.
If it was a man.
Yeah, that song is shite, just to put it mildly. But yeah, I mean, that was a good way to end the film.
Do you think it disrupts the tone of the film, having that cheesy ass song at the end?
Not really. I mean, it wasn't jarring to me, but it was just a bit. It was a bit crap. I mean, I suppose they wanted to add in a romantic song at the end
Yeah,
because of Bond and Cara getting together, but it just doesn't work. It's not as bad as the next one, License to Kill. If you ask me to, God.
yeah.
But
Well, guess what, John? We didn't ask you to.
yeah, no, we definitely didn't. But yeah, I mean, in conclusion, I think The Living Daylights is a very, very good Bond film. I think Timothy Dalton really, he really hits it out of the gate as Bond. I think my only criticisms of Timothy Dalton is maybe he isn't the best when it comes to charming the ladies, and maybe he isn't the best when it comes to the humor. But I still think he's very good as Bond. He's very cold. He's very calculating. He definitely captures the essence of Ian Fleming, and I really appreciate that he went back to the novels, and I think he was the first Bond to really capture what Fleming wrote in the books, because I think Connery said he only read maybe a couple of Ian Fleming books. So I think Dalton was the first Bond to sort of really get very close to what Ian Fleming did, and then Daniel Craig, of course, later on with Casino Royale. But yeah, no, I think he was great in this. I think the story is very good, even though it could be a little bit overcomplicated. I think the villains aren't great. I will say, Jeroen Krab as Yorkie Koskov is very over the top. Just a bit too jovial. I never really got a. I never really thought that Bond was intimidated by him. He was just a bit jovial. And yeah, you know, Joe John Baker as Brad Whitaker was a bit of a crap villain, but but saying that, I did like Necros. I do like. I forgot to mention as well. I love the John Barry soundtrack, and sadly, this is his last soundtrack. But he left on a really high note, because the soundtrack here is just definitely one of his best. That you got the all that stuff in this. It's great. So yeah, it's a really great film. Like I said, my only criticisms are the villains aren't very good. Maybe the plot is a little bit too complicated at times, but apart from that, I think it's a great film. Definitely, I think a nice break. From the previous films. It's nice to return to a more grounded, serious film with this. So I'm going to close off by giving Living Daylights a very respectable 9 out of 10. So yeah.
Thank you, Jack, very much for that wonderful assessment. Okay, now we'll pass the microphone to Alan. Please, Alan, take it away. The Living Daylights.
The Living Daylights. First of two movies with Timothy Dalton, James Bond #4. Yeah, I've always enjoyed this one, and I think for my money, this is the better of the two Dalton movies. I've always enjoyed this one. I mean, Timothy Dalton was definitely a refreshing change of pace from Roger Moore, with all due love and respect to Roger Moore, of course. But Dalton definitely approached the role differently than Roger Moore did. Roger Moore had more of a lighthearted approach to the part, and for Roger Moore, that worked perfectly fine. I mean, that's the way Roger Moore did it, and I thought for most of his era, 5 movies out of 7 in particular, I thought Roger Moore was a very good James Bond indeed. And I'll also say he was my very first Bond as well. So thank you, Roger Moore, and rest in peace, Roger Moore. You are greatly missed. But yeah, Timothy Dalton was a nice change of pace. Because he took the role more seriously, and as Jack has already mentioned, Dalton he did his homework. He read the books, so the Ian Fleming books. So he definitely had done his homework about the part, and I think it's been said that Dalton was Daniel Craig before Daniel Craig was Daniel Craig, as far as playing Bond. And maybe that's why Dalton did not prove to be as popular a Bond as Craig or some of the other ones, because maybe audiences weren't quite ready yet for the gritty Bond, because Dalton was definitely a gritty kind of Bond, and maybe The Living Daylights, and especially License to Kill, those Bond movies were kind of before their time, and maybe audiences were still missing Roger Moore's take on Bond. because Roger Moore had played the part for so long that maybe people associated Bond as being a more lighthearted kind of character. I mean, there was
Yeah.
also Sean Connery, who was tougher, of course, but I know, again, Dalton was following on the heels of Roger Moore, so he was definitely a change of pace from Roger Moore. And he
I mean,
chose a different
Alan,
approach.
sorry, do you mind if I ask you a question? Regarding Timothy Dalton, because you were probably around when the movie was released.
Oh, yeah.
What was the general reaction about him at the time when he was cast? Because from what I've heard, everybody, like when it was released, not many people warmed up to Timothy Dalton, and only since Craig, I guess, has he really got more appreciation. What was it like back in the day?
Well, I mean, I definitely saw Living Daylights at the theater because, 1987. So, yeah, I was 18 years old. I think it came out in the summer of 87. So I had just graduated from high school when Living Daylights was released. Dalton, I think Living Daylights did reasonably well for the simple reason that audiences were curious about the new James Bond and just to see what the new Bond was going to be like. But the fact is, Dalton did have the handicap, at least in the United States, that he wasn't a particularly well-known actor in the United States. He was definitely much more well-known in Britain. But if you were to say to American Bond fans back in 1987, okay, they have the new James Bond. Who is it? Timothy Dalton. Who? You know, I mean, he certainly wasn't an all-out unknown like George Lazenby was. Don't get me wrong, but he wasn't a star per se, or he wasn't a superstar. He wasn't a huge name, at least not in America. He wasn't a huge name. Although, if you're familiar with that classic film, The Lion in Winter, with Katharine Hepburn and Peter O'Toole, Dalton played the prince, I think, in that movie. And as a matter of fact, he has one of my favorite lines in that movie when Dalton says, "Piss on your piece." That's one of my favorite lines. And Dalton has that line in The Lion in Winter. It's a great movie, and even though it's primarily the Katharine Hepburn Peter O'Toole show, but Dalton does have a very good supporting role in it as the prince. Also, Anthony Hopkins is in that movie too, as one of the sons. Yeah.
Did you know, actually, fun fact, did you know that I think in England, Timothy Dalton actually played Lord Asriel in a production of The Northern Lights? The Philip Pullman novel, because in the film Daniel Craig plays Asriel. So that's
yes. They did a stage version of it. You're absolutely right, and I've seen photographs from that production. I would love to have seen it. I take it they didn't shoot it, or if they did, maybe just for the cast and crew's personal private pleasures. But I mean, I would love to see that stage production of his Dark Materials. I'd love to see it. I really would. I've only seen photographs from that production, but yeah, Dalton played the father in that one.
Because I think before Bond, he was more famous for his theatre work than his on-screen work.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he had done some other films and stuff, and again, I think The Lion in Winter is probably the film you might know him better for pre-James Bond. But again, he wasn't a huge name here in the United States. I mean, Roger Moore, everybody knew who Roger Moore was, thanks to The Saint. And he was also on that show, The Persuaders. And of course, he had also done some film work. But I think just for The Saint alone, American audiences definitely knew who Roger Moore was. Timothy Dalton, not so much. But again, I think audiences turned out for The Living Daylights just because they were curious about the new James Bond and how he was going to fare. And they were curious, okay, who is this Timothy Dalton guy, and how is he going to be as Bond? And also, as Jack already mentioned, Dalton, he wasn't the first choice to take over for Roger Moore. It was Pierce Brosnan who was going to do it, and but unfortunately, Pierce Brosnan was still under contract for the show Remington Steele. Brosnan thought he was going to get out of his contract, but then NBC decided at the last minute to renew the show for another season, and that made Brosnan unfortunately unavailable to do it at the time. So he was forced to drop out. Of course, Brosnan thankfully would get his chance later, but as far as directly taking over for Roger Moore, Brosnan had to step aside, and Dalton was the second choice. So Dalton got the part instead. And yeah, I think for his first time out of the gate, I mean, sadly, he's only going to do 2 movies, but for the first film, yeah, I enjoyed Dalton's performance in this a lot, and I enjoy the movie a lot. I don't think it's a perfect Bond film. I think the plot is very, very confusing, even though I know it involves drug smuggling mistaken identity and all of that. But the fact is, there's so many double crosses and triple crosses and fourple crosses amongst the characters. You know, who's on whose side. I mean, we know which side Bond is on, but the other characters, are they on Bond's side or are they not? I mean, double crosses, triple crosses, you know, going back and forth. That even now when I watch the film, I can't follow the plot completely. I've kind of thrown in the towel by this point, but I do think overall this is a very, very entertaining Bond film, and I thought a great debut for Dalton. And again, you know, he played the part differently. He took the part seriously. He had read the books, and also, of course, he's just a damn good actor. I mean that voice of his presence, his command, and he's a very suave, good-looking guy. Besides, he looks good in the tux, and I thought he was quite good, very, very good. The movie does kind of suffer a bit because it came out in 1987, and this was right around the time when the AIDS thing that was a big thing in the news, yeah, the Bond producers felt that it would be wrong at this point in time to show James Bond getting into bed with all these women. And so for The Living Daylights, they gave him only one single Bond girl to woo for the whole movie, which of course was Miriam Diabo. And of course, they never showed Bond and Miriam Diabo's in bed together. So we don't see them in bed. He gets romantic with her. We see Bond's romantic side, but we don't see his sexual side. Kara, that's her character's name. So we see him romancing Kara and only romancing Kara and nobody else. But we never see them in bed together because, again, they just didn't think it would be right to show Bond jumping into bed with all these women at the time. And I felt bad for Dalton that he was denied that. But okay, he basically gets a girlfriend. I mean, Kara literally becomes his girlfriend in this movie, not just a passing love interest. And then, of course, tradition follows that when we get to the next movie, License to Kill, Kara has totally disappeared. No explanation given, as usually is the case for Bond when he momentarily falls for a woman. By the next movie, she's gone with no explanation.
Because he says, "You didn't think I'd miss this performance." Well, James, you did.
Yeah, really. But okay, so he was settled with that, and I think this was also the time. I think they also made the decision they didn't want to show Bond smoking. Am I right about that? We don't see Bond.
No, actually, tell a lie. He smokes in License to Kill with Sanchez. But I don't know if he smokes in this one.
Oh, okay. So maybe that wasn't a factor, but it was definitely a factor about the AIDS thing, and they didn't want to show Bond in bed with woman after woman after woman. So he gets only one Bond girl to woo in this movie. That's for sure. But Dalton, I mean, he's great in the part. I mean, again, he's very suave, very brave. I love that voice of his. When he talks, and very, very a very classy Bond. And he took the role seriously, and I appreciated that. I think Miriam Diabo is wonderful as Kara, and again, what we don't know, is she a sniper? Is she not a sniper? What are her true motives? But very good chemistry with Dalton. Very beautiful woman besides. And I thought she and Dalton made a good pair in this movie. Let's see. Then you got Jerome Krabe. I think the correct pronunciation is Krabe. I used to pronounce it crab, but I think it's Krabe.
He may as well be a crab.
Yeah, as General Koskov. I think he's very amusing, but I just don't understand why he's always kissing Bond whenever he sees him. I mean, that's a bit much.
James! Yeah. James! Mwah, mwah. Yeah.
I'm not going to do that with any guy.
To be honest,
Ollie, Jack, come on.
Is Koskov? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is Koskov the first? Well, other than Winton Kid, the first gay Bond villain?
No, he's not. He's not gay because he kisses James on the cheek, but because he's with women by the pool and stuff. He's not a gay character. Like he was. He was sort of. He kissed.
But he
was kissed.
He could fool you. He could definitely fool you.
Yeah, I think when he kissed, I think when he kissed Bond on the cheeks, that was sort of a greeting because like they do that in some countries. The French would kiss you on the cheeks or whatever if they meet you. But
that's what
yeah, I can understand what you're saying, but I don't think he is a gay character because he is kissing and sort of playing around with the girls at the pool. But yeah,
I mean, I was only joking, but yeah, I mean, I suppose I mean, if we wanted to go to speculate, he could be bisexual, but it doesn't matter. But you know, yeah, I get your point, Alan, about him kissing Bond. You know.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it's a tradition from another country, I mean that's fine. I respect that. I guess his character is Russian, and I don't know if that's what they do in Russia. Okay, whatever. But it's just kind of silly the number of times he does it in the movie.
it is stupid. Yeah,
but I do think he's very amusing in the part. I do think it's a good performance. You know, his lighthearted General Koskov. He isn't much of a villain because he's so lighthearted. But I mean, I do think he's amusing. So I do like his performance despite the kissing.
No, if you wanted to kiss Bond, why didn't he give him the kiss of death? You know, instead that would have been actually more threatening than anything else he does in the film.
Exactly. Yeah, let's see. John Rhys Davies. Who doesn't like John Rhys Davies as General Pushkin? He's great, very, very amusing, and great actor. I mean, he's good in anything, whether you see him in Indiana Jones movies or Lord of the Rings movies, or you see him here with James Bond. I mean, he's just a wonderful actor. He's good in anything he does, and very funny, and good in his supporting role of General Pushkin. So I like him a lot. I do think you have a great henchman in the form of Andreas Wisniewski as Necros. I mean, very tall, well-built kind of guy, and I just love that scene where he's dressed up as the milkman, and he's got the exploding milk bottles that he can use as bombs. He throws a milk bottle, boom, and then there's that great fight he has with a guy in the kitchen, and he winds up, beating the shit out of the guy in the kitchen. Oh, that's a really good fight scene. So for me, you may not know the name, but I think he does make a memorable henchman for a Bond movie, so I like him a lot.
Alan, sorry to interrupt. Can I just quickly take a moment to shout out the guys in the live chat? We've got Sam Harrison and Stephen McKenzie. Welcome, you two.
Oh,
hello.
Hello, Sam. Hello, Stephen. How you guys doing? Thanks for joining us today.
Sam just said something quite funny. Koskov going up and kissing Bond wouldn't be allowed now with COVID. Yeah, that's true.
Definitely not. No, definitely not. But no, great. Nice to see you, Sam. Nice to see you, Stephen. Great guys, both of you. Thanks for joining us today. Let's see. What else can I say about the movie? Let's see. As far as the regular people, okay, we have a new Miss Moneypenny in the form of Carolyn Bliss, and although she's a decent Miss Moneypenny and she's cute, but she will only last through the Timothy Dalton movies, and then that's it for her. So just this movie and License to Kill, and then she's gone. Not as strong a Moneypenny as, oh my God, I feel so stupid.
Lois Maxwell.
Lois Maxwell, thank you. I know I'm having some memory issues these days. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, Lois. I mean, definitely nowhere near as memorable Moneypenny as Lois Maxwell, but nonetheless, I mean, Carolyn Bliss. I mean, she's fine, in the part. She's cute, and I do raise a smile when she says to Bond, "Oh, would you like to come back to my place and listen to some Barry Manilow records?" Or whatever that line is. Okay, yeah, that's cute. That's cute. Good old Desmond Llewellyn as Q, and like Jack, I love the scene where they're at Q's headquarters or whatever, and there's that device that looks like a stereo, and Q says it's called a ghetto blaster. I mean, I love it. That's a wonderful line. I was laughing my ass off in the theater when he said that the first time I heard it. That's a great line. A ghetto blaster. Perfect. Just perfect. So great to see Desmond Llewellyn in this. Of course I have to mention Joe Don Baker as Brad Whitaker. Personally, I do like Joe Don Baker better in GoldenEye with Pierce Brosnan when he's playing a different character. Here he's kind of a baddie. He loves playing with his army toys. I think that's the one thing that's amusing about his character, his love for army toys. and all things military. But I mean, Joe Don Baker, very talented actor. You know, he's certainly a very, very talented character actor. And yeah, I thought his performance here was amusing. I do like his final fight with Bond. All the his toys smashing around all over the place. Yeah, that's a good fight scene. So I thought Joe Don Baker was good in this. Great action scenes all over the place. I mean, I thought Dalton was introduced in a great way when they're playing the military games on that island, and Bond, you know, literally parachutes into the scene, and you know, and Dalton turns to the camera, and the camera comes up to him, and that's our first shot of Dalton. I think that was a great way to introduce Dalton as the new Bond. And of course, you got the great action scene, you know, where he's clinging to the top of the truck, and then the truck goes over the cliff, and you know, Dalton pops the parachute, and he gets that amusing scene with the woman on the boat. Although I have to tell you, to this day, I don't know why, when I saw the trailer for The Living Daylights, which was a couple of months before the movie was released, in the trailer for Living Daylights, they showed the bit with Dalton landing on the boat and saying, you know, I'll report in 1 hour. And the girl says something like, oh, well, won't you stay for a drink? And then Dalton goes, well, you better make that 2. The women in the audience booed when he said that. I mean, what? What the hell? I mean, he's James Bond, okay? He's James Bond. He's going to enjoy a drink with a beautiful woman. You got a problem with that?
Was that because of the AIDS campaign or something? Like that just what?
I don't get it. I'm just saying, I saw the trailer and they had that scene with him landing on the boat, and when you know, the girl offers the drink, Don says, well, you better make that 2 hours. And the women in the audience booed. I don't know why. That was so ridiculous.
Maybe they find Bond sexist, or they're feminists or something. I don't know.
I don't know, but that was total bullshit. I mean, he's James Bond. He likes women. The women like him. You know, shut up.
Get over it. Yeah.
You dumb broads in the you know, at least the dumb broads who were in the movie theater for that particular movie. I don't even know what the movie was, but anyway, that was just so stupid. I mean, why boo? That's ridiculous. But anyway, I did think it was a great scene to introduce Dalton with. Lots of great action scenes. Of course, when Bond and Kara are in his new Aston Martin, and they have the big chase in the snow. That's a great scene, and of course that culminates in Bond and Kara skiing down the slope in the cello case. That's a lot of fun. The action scene at the circus where Bond's contact is killed. That's a great scene. And then of course all the location stuff, all the great locales that we see in this movie are a lot of fun. It's definitely a very globe-trotting kind of Bond adventure. So the stuff. Let's see. Where is it that they go later on in the movie? Is it Pakistan or Egypt? Where is it?
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Okay. Afghanistan. Yeah. Great locales there. I like that stuff a lot. Of course, the big action scene at the end with Bond and Necros hanging from the bag on the back of the plane, super high up, and they're fighting each other while trying to hold on to the bag at the same time. And I know Dalton did a lot of his own stunts. I know he didn't do them all, but I mean, I have to ask you, it really did look like Dalton was high up in the sky, or at least that one bit where he I guess the wind pushes him back into the plane after the fight with Necros was over. I mean, was Dalton really truly high up in the sky, or was that like a green screen effect?
I don't know about that specifically, but I would imagine at points there was some projection, like, because you know they have close-ups. I think I think Dalton did most of his own stunts. I don't think he did all of them. Like that one, I would imagine a professional stuntman. Like for the wide shots, you can see the stuntmen.
Yeah.
The net, but I mean it's all trickery, isn't it? So
right. But I have to say that the bit where he, I guess the wind blows him back into the plane at the end of the fight. I mean, it looked like Dalton was really high up in the sky, and you know that was pretty close to the opening where the opening of the plane. So it's like, damn. I mean, it does look pretty effective. I mean, I'm sure Dalton was quite safe, but it looked like he was really high up. So I thought that was really cool. That was very effective. But that's a great scene. Dalton is also allowed in Living Daylights to have a little bit of humor. which I appreciate because he's not going to have any humor or hardly any humor at all in the next movie, but he's allowed a little bit of humor in this one. I love the bit where he's in the plane. And Kara is chasing after him in the Jeep. You know, she's trying to get into the plane. You know, Dalton is, you know, he can't speak to her, but he's from the cockpit. He's trying to tell her how to get into the plane, and she can't understand him. I have to turn this on, you know, and Dalton does that.
Yeah. Oh, Alan, doesn't he also like mouth? He mouths like the words "for fuck's sake" or something. I thought he did that, but it might just be.
Either that, or he's like, "Oh God!" I was like, "Oh, why can't she understand me?" Oh God! I just love that eye roll that he does. Like, oh my God! I mean,
because he does the whole like thing, and with his hand, it's like the ramp. You know?
Yes, the ramp. Drive the Jeep up the ramp, and she still doesn't understand him. He's like, "Oh God!" You know,
it's a shame cell phones weren't around then.
Yeah, that look on his face and the eye roll that he does, I think that's great. I mean, Dalton, if he were allowed to, he could be pretty funny. So I appreciate that he's allowed these little moments of humor in the movie that he's allowed. You know, it's a shame they didn't pursue that further. Well, anyway, to wrap it all up, I mean, I do think The Living Daylights is a really good Bond movie. Oh, I have to mention. Okay, this is the last thing I'll mention about the film, and then Ollie, you can have the mic. But yeah, the theme song by Aha, it's always been one of my favorite Bond themes. I really love the theme tune by Aha, even though you're right, they'll always be best known for "Take on Me." But I really think it's a groovy tune. I think it's got a lot of great power to it. It's catchy. It has a very Bondian flavor to it. Although, make what you want about the phrase "the living daylights." Actually, I was looking it up while Jack was talking about it with you, and according to Wikipedia, "the living daylights" is an idiom. It's like from the 18th century that it's a reference to the eyes and the senses and being alive. I mean, you'd have to ask Ian Fleming himself if he were still around what it means, because isn't "The Living Daylights" an Ian Fleming title?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. So he chose to name one of his Bond stories "The Living Daylights," but apparently "The Living Daylights," it's a reference to the eyes and the senses and being alive. I mean, what does that have to do with James Bond? I don't know. You'd have to ask Ian Fleming, but that's basically what it means. The eyes, the senses, being alive. That's basically what it means, I guess. But I do think that that you know, the song is really catchy and really powerful. I mean, you can dissect the lyrics all you want. But you know, I think it sounds real good, you know, and the singer in the group sings it real good, and it's a shame that it wasn't a big hit in the States, because it could have been. I guess, you know, Aha will always be best known for "Take on Me," but I really do think "The Living Daylights" is a really catchy, you know, very energetic Bond theme, and I've always enjoyed it. The titles that go along with the song at the beginning, they're okay. I mean, okay, we see Dalton in shadow, with Kara, and you know, he points the gun, and we see some beautiful women, and then you've got the champagne glass and all that. I mean, it's fine. It's not the greatest titles Maurice Binder ever did, but it's fine. You know, it'll do. But I do think the song is great, personally. So to wrap it all up, I do think "The Living Daylights" is a great Bond film. I think this is definitely the better of the two Dalton movies. I think Dalton had a great debut in this movie. And
sorry, Alan, just one more thing. What did you make of the soundtrack?
I thought the soundtrack was good. Yeah, I mean, it obviously has a very late '80s flavor to it, that's for sure. But I thought it worked. I mean, yeah, okay, so you've got those late '80s keyboards, and maybe there's some drum machines in there. But I thought for this movie it worked. You know, I thought the score was quite good. Actually, I got a friend of mine named Greg, who's a super duper diehard Bond fan like we are. You guys would like him. Unfortunately, you know, his access to the internet is kind of limited where he is, but he's a big Bond fan, and I know "The Living Daylights" is one of his favorite soundtracks for a Bond movie. I mean, he had the CD, he had the cassette, and he played it quite a bit during times when he and I, you know, spent time together hanging out, and I know he really loves that soundtrack for the film. My friend Greg. So yeah, great score for the film. Again, very late '80s flavor to it, but I think it worked. You know.
And also to note, Alan, it's actually John Barry's last soundtrack for Bond. He wouldn't do another one after that.
Oh, okay. Well, I think John Barry went out on a great note with the soundtrack to Living Daylights. I think it's a really great score. I mean, just hearing the instrumental versions of the theme song, popping up in the action scenes every so often. Just hearing that, da 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 da. I mean, I love that music. I just think the song and the arrangement of it is just so good. So whenever it pops up in the film, I smile. So I think the music for it is very good. The only thing that stops Living Daylights really from being a perfect film for me is that I just think the plot is confusing in various places. Again, this is a movie where there's double crosses, triple crosses, fourple crosses, so to speak, and some parts of it are a little confusing to me. And also another minor quibble. It's very minor. The fact that the drug is raw opium, and didn't Bond deal with a raw opium thing in For Your Eyes Only? There was raw opium, and now 3 movies later, raw opium again. So
Was it Live and Let Die?
Or was it Live and Let Die? I thought it was For Your Eyes Only, where
I don't remember any drugs. Well, then again, John Glen may have been on drugs making that film, given
there was some drugs. I think there was some drugs smuggling in that. I think Alan's right with what's his name, Topol's character, Columbo, I think it was. But yeah.
So yeah, I just thought they kind of went back to the raw opium thing a little too early. 3 movies later, oh, here we go again with raw opium. But again, that's a very minor little quibble of mine. It doesn't damper the movie in any way, but just a very minor quibble. But overall, I think this is a great Bond movie. And for me, it's definitely the better of the 2 Dalton films. Great debut for Timothy Dalton. And I've always enjoyed The Living Daylights. I like it a whole lot. So I will give The Living Daylights a very solid 8 out of 10.
Yay!
Well,
I was going to say, Ollie, before you take over the mic, I just want to mention briefly, because I didn't mention him, I thought John Terry was awful as Felix Leiter. He had no chemistry with Timothy Dalton in this film, and I think he's probably the worst Felix Leiter. And it's also to note this film set in Afghanistan around the same time the Russians were fighting in Afghanistan during that war. But yeah, I just thought John Terry was pretty bad as Felix. But I'll hand the mic over to you now. Sorry, just wanted to mention that before.
No, that's all right. That's fine. Well, I agree. And I mean, he only gets like 1 or 2 scenes anyway. But yeah, okay. The Living Daylights. Well, I'm pretty much in agreement with you guys. Yeah, I really like this film, and this is definitely my favorite of the Timothy Dalton era. Repeat, the Timothy Dalton era. I mean, it's only 2 films, but
all 2 movies of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. At least he can brag. He had more than Lazenby. Timothy Dalton. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an actor that they were eyeing up for quite some time. Not in a perverted way, but just in the sense that they were eyeing him up for the role of Bond even before Roger Moore. So he's obviously been in the can for quite some time. And he was now at the age where he felt he was old enough to play the part and he could do it conceivably. And obviously after 12 years of Roger Moore, they were going to take the franchise in a different direction. But as for The Living Daylights, yeah, I really like this film. It's really grown on me over the years. The first time I saw it, I did find it confusing and sort of hard to follow, but I've watched it quite a few times since then, and I really enjoy it. It's always been one that I've gone back to. I mean, I guess I am sort of a fan of the harder edged Bond films because Daniel Craig is my favorite Bond. But that being said, Timothy Dalton, again, he's also been an actor that I've admired outside of Bond, but I really like him as James Bond. I think he's great. I mean, I do agree that he does lack the charm and the humor and the presence with the ladies, but that is only a small thing. But like some of his delivery when he's with Cara is a little awkward. Certainly on the Ferris wheel scene. When,
let's buy it.
Yeah, I was just about to say, yeah, when he's like, don't think, just let it happen. Yeah, and then she wants to dress, and he's like, let's buy it. Yogi will pay for it. It's like, okay, Tim, just calm it down. It's a bit too intense, So, but I think he does the dark side of Bond very well. I mean, in a way, I think he kind of looks the closest to what Fleming described, like this kind of tall, dark stranger. But I think Dalton definitely he has the ruggedness of Bond, which Craig has as well. But I think Craig expands on what Dalton did. So Dalton is as everyone had described, he is a template for Daniel Craig, which I totally agree with. But I'm not going to say that as a detriment to Timothy Dalton because, Timothy Dalton is great. I mean, it's a shame he only did 2 films because I feel he really could have grown into the part. But this film is definitely the better of the 2 films for me. I do like the story, and I think it's very interesting. It is more of a thriller, more of a sort of Cold War espionage spy thriller, which I like. I mean, after 12 years of campy, let's have a laugh with Roger Moore Bond, which I still like. I like Roger Moore with great respect, but it was nice to have a change of tone, which is very much felt here. There's a couple of odd, humorous things like Koskov. I just don't like the villains of this film. I think the villains are crap, personally. Apart from Necros, he's a decent henchman. He's like the physical muscle. I mean, the actor actually used to be a dancer before he did this film, which was interesting. I can't pronounce his name, Andreas Wisniewski or something like that. And Necros doesn't really have he doesn't have many lines in the film, but he has some good fights with Dalton as well. But the villains are shit. I mean, Brad Whitaker, I mean, he's an arms dealer. He's just a generic arms dealer. I mean, he doesn't really get a lot to do in the film. I think it was a missed opportunity not having him be there when they were actually trying to smuggle the opium at the end in Afghanistan. He should have been there. And they should have had Bond fight him there instead of going to his base. And like when he's playing with his toy soldiers, it's just a bit silly. I mean, and like his death to me was so anticlimactic. They have a brief little gunfight, and then Bond whistles with his little machine and knocks the pillar on top of Whitaker, and Whitaker dies. That's it. It's just very anticlimactic. I think they could have given him much more to do, but Joe Don Baker performs it well enough, but there's just not much to his character. He's just kind of boring. And so the villains do drag the film down. But as for Jerome Krabe as Koskov, well, oh, James, mwah, mwah, mwah. It's like, oh God. I mean, he'd be the Bond villain you'd want to strangle on Valentine's Day because he keeps just kissing you all the time.
He'd kiss Bond to death before he'd shoot him to death.
Yeah. God. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't know if it was Jerome Krabe or whether that was the way the character was written or an amalgamation of the two, but I'm not threatened by this character. And there's a scene where like Kara and Bond have been captured, and he talks to her and he's like, I'm going to try and get you to play with a conservatoire, and she slaps him across the face, and he's trying to talk all sinister. I mean, for one thing, you can't really hear what he's saying, and then the next thing is like, it's just not intimidating to me. So I think I'm not saying he was a miscast, but I think the villain really could have used a bit more. The villains, actually, both of them could have used more development. Again, I mean, yeah, Timothy Dalton for me just rocks it. I mean, the best moment for Timothy Dalton for me, which is actually my favorite scene that he ever does as James Bond, is that interrogation scene with Pushkin. I think that is the moment when Timothy Dalton proves he is James Bond, and it's a different take. I mean, that's making a bold statement. It's like Roger Moore was done. We've had our laughs now. Let's get serious. Not to detriment what Roger Moore did, but just to say that, look, we're taking this in a new direction. We hope you like it. And that interrogation scene is brilliant. It's so brilliantly written. It's so brilliantly acted. Timothy Dalton just owns the screen there when he's pointing the gun, and Pushkin says, "Oh, you are a professional. You do not kill without reason." And I like how they're staging the fake death as well. When he says, "If I trusted Koskov, you and I wouldn't be talking," and then he says, "Then I must die." So it's nice. It's nice. I like the way Bond plays that scene because, he doesn't really trust anyone, but he has to kind of allow himself to work with Pushkin in order to stage the fake death. Like you said, the plot does get a little bit overbearing at times. It can get a bit. It does tie itself in a few knots. It is a bit much. I think they could have simplified the plot a little bit. It can be a bit hard to follow. I got the basic gist of it, having watched it quite a few times now, but even now, I still kind of struggle to comprehend some of the double crossings and the Quinn crossings or whatever. It can be a bit much. I also really like Kara. I think Kara's a great Bond girl. She's different as well. She's not a bimbo. I think she's a bit naive, and I think she's a little bit too trusting of Koskov, and she obviously, I think she's been manipulated as well. I don't think she realizes quite what Koskov has done to her. He set her up, and
Yeah.
she's fallen for his lies. But I really like her relationship with Bond and how he kind of helps her to see that Koskov is a bad man, and also, obviously, it's made very clear that Kara, I guess, falls in love with Bond. I don't think Bond quite reciprocates in the same way, but he does definitely find her charming. I mean, obviously, he clearly wants to get into bed with her. But I think it was tastefully done, and it was nice that Bond, actually, he did grow attached to her and he did care for her. So when the love scenes happen, there is a lot more of an emotional plug behind it. You do feel like, okay, he does care about her. And Kara actually gets involved. She gets involved in the action. She doesn't just get captured all the time, even though they do get captured. Kara does contribute. And I think Mariam Darbo's accent is also very good. I think she puts on a good accent. Sorry. I also like the action sequences. Also, one scene which you guys haven't mentioned is the guy in the prison when he says, "I didn't tell you to get down. I didn't tell you to get up." The prison guard. He's kind of a small chubby man, but he's a real prick.
He's a dick.
Yeah, very funny.
Yeah.
Very funny scene. Yeah.
I mean, he's a real dick to Kara when he's like, "Oh, strip! I told you to strip," or whatever,
Yeah, so he's a real nasty piece of work. But that was a good action scene. It was pretty satisfying to see him get locked up in his own cell. And Dalton kicks ass in that scene. And actually, worthy to note, Timothy Dalton does a lot of his own stunts, which is obviously slightly different to Roger Moore, certainly in the later years. But I really appreciate that Dalton was committed to the role. I mean, for whatever you may say, yes, he only did 2 films, but in the time he was Bond, he was very committed, and he did his research. He read the books, he watched the old films, and he tried to put his own spin on it. And I think he did a very good job. I mean, that opening scene is one of my favorite openings to a Bond movie. It's so tense and it's so suspenseful. I like the way they're sent on the mission, and we reveal Bond in kind of a cool shot where after one of the other agents gets thrown off the cliff, Bond just turns around and we zoom in on him. It's just perfect. It's subtle, but it works. It really works. It's a great way to kind of, show us this is the new Bond. And what a great action-packed chase that was. And yeah, I mean, it is a bit convenient how he parachutes down to that woman on the boat, but whatever. It's a Bond movie. I'll go with it. The music score, I think, is beautiful. It's one of my favorite scores, actually, from the series. And John Barry really outdid himself. I mean, it's his last score as well. So, John Barry, thank you very much. You did some great music for the series. But I can understand his decision to leave. I mean, obviously, he'd been scoring the film since the beginning. So I guess he'd probably run out of ideas, or he wanted to move on to something else, which I think is fair enough. But his score for The Living Daylights is beautiful. It really is amazing. And it's definitely probably one of my favorite James Bond soundtracks. Actually, I will at some point do a ranking of the Bond soundtracks after No Time to Die has come out, and I've listened to that soundtrack. The song by a-ha, The Living Daylights, yeah, it's good. I think it's catchy, but the lyrics don't really make a lot of sense, which kind of puzzle me. Like, come the morning, then the headlights fade away. What the fuck? What does that mean? Like, what does that have to do with James Bond? Save the darkness and will never fade away. The living daylights. Yeah.
Not only that, Ollie, but I find it really weird how he sort of changes his voice. At one point, he kind of sounds a bit more female. Like, changes his voice a bit, but yeah.
It's not that he sounds female. It's that he's obviously going for the higher notes and raising the pitch in his voice. I mean,
yeah,
like the a-ha do that in Take On Me as well. When he says, I forget the lyric. It's like, take me on.
Yeah,
when he's like, I'll be gone for a day or two. Yeah, he's just going. He's reaching the crescendo in his voice. No, I mean, after the Living Daylights song, it's groovy. It's catchy. It's not my favorite Bond song, but I think it's pleasant enough. I think it's actually better than a few of the previous songs that we've had in the 80s. Just personal opinion. But again, yeah, the lyrics don't make a lot of sense. So I think they were trying to force the words "The Living Daylights" into the song. I think they should have renamed the song, kept the same beat, but changed the title of the song to something else, because the words "The Living Daylights" in a song in this context don't make a lot of sense. But it's catchy. The title sequence, I agree, is kind of lazy. It's like you've got the car headlights. I think it's just random. Like obviously it's trying to fit with the song, but it's basically loads of naked women, and one of them even in a champagne glass. So yeah, it's
weird. Yeah,
it's a bit weird. And Maurice Binder's clearly running out of ideas. He's sort of struggling to keep the artistry of those sequences going. I mean, in the Roger Moore era, certainly the title sequences, some of them were a bit repetitive, but yeah, I mean, he's only doing one more, and then he's done. But yeah, I really do enjoy some of the casting. Like General Pushkin, John Rhys Davies. He's a great actor. I've always loved him in Indiana Jones and Lord of the Rings and other things. And he's great in this film. And again, that interrogation scene is fabulous. And I like that he turns out to be quite the ally in the end, which is good. He has a great scene actually with Brad Whitaker as well. Sort of, I think it's like nearly an hour into the film. That's quite good. Who else? I forget. I've already talked about the villains. Yeah.
John Terry.
Yeah, John Terry as Felix Leiter. Well, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't really exist. I mean, he's barely in the film. Okay, that might be going a bit far. He's only in the film for 5 minutes. I mean, think about it. Add up the screen time that he's in. He's in that one scene where the two girls collar bombed in the street, where they're like, "You want to come to a party?" And Dalton grabbed the sunglasses and he's like, "Seems like a good idea." And then he offers them cash. He's like, "Take it all." But then Felix like collars Bond into that room. Like, why didn't they just say like obviously like they didn't want to be caught out in public, but surely when he was in the car, the girls could have said, "Oh, we're taking you to Felix," but whatever. Yeah, John Terry's pretty poor as Felix Leiter. He doesn't get a lot to do in the film, so
he can't act either. Yeah.
I mean, not only that, but also he doesn't get a lot to do, so it's not all his fault. But he is very uncharismatic. I don't know why they didn't just bring David Hedison back now. I mean, he's going to come back in License to Kill, so they might as well have. They should have just brought him into this film, because thinking about it now, it's a bizarre continuity error, because the age difference between John Terry and David Hedison is quite substantial. So, yeah, it's weird when you look at the Dalton movies with the Felix Leiters. Yeah, strange. Or just take Felix out of this film entirely, because he's not necessary. But anyway, the MI6 regulars. Well, obviously Robert Brown is still M. He's okay. He's fine in this film. You've got Caroline Bliss as Moneypenny. I'm going to be totally honest and say that she's my least favorite Moneypenny of the series. It's not really her fault. She just doesn't get a lot to do, and she doesn't have that much chemistry with Timothy Dalton. And I think actually she gets even less to do in License to Kill. She has like a cameo in that film, basically. So yeah, her screen time is very limited, and there is no chemistry with Timothy Dalton. So yeah, it's a shame. She's just kind of irrelevant. I mean, the only distinction really, I mean, she's young. You know, she's a bit younger, a lot younger than Lois Maxwell was when she left the series. But I understand why they recast the role, because obviously they recast Bond, and I just can't see Timothy Dalton and Lois Maxwell doing those scenes. It would have been a bit cringy, but nevertheless, you know, Caroline Bliss is very attractive. She's a very pretty woman. And, you know, the line is okay about the Barry Manilow collection, but yeah, it's just a bit awkward, I think, with Timothy Dalton. More so, I think, on his side. He doesn't really have the bravado with the ladies. That's the thing.
Rest assured, my interests in her are purely
well, believe me,
information or whatever.
Professional. Yeah, so he says.
Yeah.
And Q, Desmond Llewellyn, yes. It's called a ghetto blaster. Love it. Fantastic moment. One of the best moments in the Bond series. And some of the gadgets in this film are actually quite good. Like the whistling smoke bomb or whatever it is, which is funny. Someone did a funny edit of The Living Daylights. They did alternate endings, and they had Bond blow up the embassy when he whistled, which was kind of funny. Yeah, so that was good. And also Saunders. Saunders is good, although it's a shame he dies, like all the John Glen allies. Oh well. But I mean his death actually was pretty dramatic, to be fair. He when he gets crushed by the sliding door, which Necros set up to crush him. That was pretty dramatic. And then the balloon comes past saying Smeart Spionum, which obviously means death to spies. That was pretty intense. So there's a lot of intense moments in this film. This film isn't played for camp laughs. I mean, there's the odd laugh here and there, but it's played pretty straight, which I appreciate. So I mean, I think that if they'd have kept this tone for the next movie, then Dalton could have had a much longer era, I think. Oh, I also like the ice chase action sequence. That's a fantastic scene. And I love the line when Bond says "salt corrosion" when he uses the laser of the car to slice the other car. That's pretty awesome. And when they go through the little shack, that's amazing. It's such a good action scene. And then you've got the finale. Which, yes.
I was just gonna say, sorry to interrupt. I also like that line. I just remembered it now. I like that line when they're shooting at his car and it's bulletproof glass, and he's like, "Oh, amazing! This modern safety glass." Like, well, that was quite good, but yeah, funny line.
And they have to ride into I think it's Vienna on the cello case, or whatever, and it's like, "We've nothing to declare, just a cello," which is
yeah.
But then you've got the finale action scene, which is in Afghanistan. The big, but when they meet the Afghan with the Mujahideen, the Afghan resistance, and they fight against the Russians and Whitaker and all of those people, and Koskov. That's a pretty good finale, actually. I really do like that, and also the fight scene between Bond and Necros is really good on the hanging on the net of opium. That's always impressed me. That. So the stunts in this film are really incredible, actually. I mean, I do believe me, I do like A View to a Kill, but I do think the stunts in that movie weren't the best. As I mean, obviously Roger Moore was a bit too old to do some of them, and I think they definitely upped their game in terms of the physical weight that Bond goes through. Like Bond goes through a lot of more physically challenging situations in this film, and that's one of them. And yeah, I like the end of the film as well when we see Gogol, and I do agree with Jack about about Gogol potentially being in Pushkin's place, which would have been a nice thread of continuity from some of the Roger Moore films. It's not a big deal, but it's his last film in the series, obviously. But yeah, it would have been nice to connect that, but it doesn't matter too much.
It's also the last film, I think, with the minister Jeffrey King. But yeah,
yes, I think that's very true, actually. Yeah. Also, I forgot to mention Cameron Shah, the guy the leader of the Afghan resistance, who actually they meet in the prison earlier. I quite like him as a character. He's good. It's nice that they try and come to Kara's show, which I really like. And the ending is nice when Bond is in her dressing room. He's like, "You didn't think I'd miss this performance?" She's like, "Oh, James." And then they play the cheesy ass song, "If There Was a Man." I don't hate the song, but I just think it's out of place for this film, personally. I mean, it's not as annoying as the next one, but we'll get to that soon for License to Kill. So, I mean, The Living Daylights, this is a really great Bond film. The only things that sort of stop it from being perfect are the plot is a bit overbearing at times. It is a bit confusing to follow. But if you get the general gist, you kind of can go with it. I do think the villains are crap, basically, yes. The villains are the main issue. They're just not memorable characters. Koskov is far too jovial, and Brad Whitaker is just a generic arms dealer. So I don't really think I can give this a perfect score. And also Caroline Bliss, I'm not a big fan of as Moneypenny. Dalton lacks a bit of charm with the ladies, but I think as first impressions go, he does a pretty good job as James Bond in this film. And the title sequence could be a bit poor by most standards. But that being said, I think I will probably give The Living Daylights a 9 out of 10. I think it's great. So now we move on to the second and final movie, unfortunately, in Timothy Dalton's era, License to Kill. Which, so yeah, we're halfway there, chaps.
halfway through the Dalton era. Yeah.
Yeah, so soon. Wow.
Yeah, I know. But I'm gonna hand the mic back over to Jack. So please do give us your thoughts on Timothy Dalton's second and final movie, License to Kill. After you, ladies first.
Well, then I should hand the mic over back to you. But I'm joking.
Ah,
License to Kill. Well, this is a very, let's just say it's a very interesting James Bond film. Because when it came out, it was the last Bond film for 6 years. So this really is the end of an era in many ways. Because after this, Cubby Broccoli would only do one more Bond film with Brosnan, and then things would change. But License to Kill, I think we're all pretty much in agreement in this one. I think we all pretty much agree in this one that this is definitely a disappointment after The Living Daylights. I think this is Dalton's weakest Bond film. And I know there are a lot of fans of License to Kill. I know there's a lot of Bond fans who love this film and say it's their favorite Bond film or one of their favorite Bond films. And I can understand why some fans would love this because this is very gritty, very dark. But License to Kill, I just think this film is a bit of a mess, really. I mean, I do like the opening gunpowder. That's pretty cool. It's like the arrangement, and I do like the Michael Carmen soundtrack. But then you get into the opening, pre-opening, and just from the very beginning, you could tell that this is sort of a different Bond film because you got Talisa Soto in this, and as Lupe, and you've got that scene where she's with her lover, and then Sanchez comes in, and he starts to whip her, and you can tell from the very start that this is going to be a much darker, a much more depressing, I guess you could say, in some way.
To be honest, Jack. I mean, if he didn't like her acting, he should have just said. He didn't need to do that to
her. Yeah. I just love James so much.
I love James so much.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get into that in a minute, but yeah. I mean that pre-opening, it's very interesting. You've got David Hedison returning as Felix Leiter, which that's one positive I will give this movie is I do think David Hedison bringing him back was great. And I think he's very good in this film, even though he's a bit older. I think he works well with Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton. And it's sort of interesting that he's getting married. And, while this is happening, they're going after Sanchez. And I will admit, License to Kill, even though it's not my favorite in the Bond series, it does have some pretty good action scenes. Like I do like that opening aerial action sequence where Bond is lowered onto the plane and he... he's lowered onto Sanchez's plane and he connects it to his plane. And then we see that he and Felix and Sharky, they parachute out and, they arrive in the wedding, the chapel. I thought that was quite nice. It was a pretty good way to open the film. Then you get into the title sequence and the theme, and I think the title sequence for this is pretty crap. It's very shoddy. It's kind of sad Morse Bender left with this title sequence because it's not very good, to be honest. It's just it's very generic. Definitely one of the weakest Bond title sequences. And the song "License to Kill" by Gladys Knight, I think it's okay. It's decent. I don't love it. I don't hate it either. I think it's kind of catchy, and I think Gladys Knight, she really belts it out.
doesn't it feel kind of a bit too, I don't know, upbeat for such a dark film?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it feels a bit too, it feels a bit too upbeat for this sort of film. But
she's happy about she seems to be happy when she sings about killing. So it's like, geez,
got a license to kill, and I'm going straight for your heart.
Yeah, and then it ends with kill. Which is kind of
that's a bit cheesy. Yeah, and a bit cheesy as well. Kill. Yeah, but it is a bit cheese. But yeah, then you get into the film itself, and I have to agree with what other people said about License to Kill. This feels more like a Miami Vice TV movie than it does a Bond film. It feels more like Scarface with Al Pacino, with all the sort of drug stuff going on in this, and
Except it's just Timothy.
yeah, exactly. I think my main problem with License to Kill is that it's a very dark Bond film, and I don't mind Bond films going in a darker direction, but I think personally they went too far here with some of the violence. Like, there's a lot of brutal killings in this. Like, you got Milton Crest later on; he gets his head blown up. You got a guy who's impaled by a forklift. You've got Dario who falls into this grinder. You got a lot of
There's
pretty
blood, isn't there? There's quite a
yeah.
bit of blood in this film.
Yeah, you got a lot of blood and guts sort of flying everywhere in this film, and I understand what John Glen was trying to do. He was trying to go down a sort of gritty, even more of a gritty route than uh, Living Daylights. Trying to show the brutality, I guess, of some of the killings and stuff. But I just think it's a bit too much for a Bond film. I think this is the first Bond film to get a 15 certificate in the UK, and I think maybe it's like PG-13 in America. But yeah, I mean, it got a 15 certificate here, and I think the Blu-ray's got that as well. And
I mean,
I think
would
for
you? Sorry, Jack. Would you say personally that I mean, it works for Casino Royale because Casino Royale still feels like a Bond film. License to Kill doesn't really have a lot of the classic Bond tropes because they were so deviating. Whereas Casino Royale tried to keep the traits of what made Bond Bond. I mean, would you agree with that? Or
No, I would 100% agree with that. I think Casino Royale had the right balance as well, like the Living Daylights of being dark, but also having humorous moments in there as well. Like, the only really dark scene I think in Casino Royale is that scene where Bond's getting tortured. But it's not like that's the whole movie. It's not like Bond is, throughout the whole movie is getting tortured and there's brutal slangs and people's heads getting blown up. I think the thing with License to Kill is it does feel more like, a product of the late 80s. It feels more, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's quite a dated film because it feels like a late 80s, Miami Vice, TV movie, or like it feels like Scarface. And I think I think one of my problems with License to Kill as well is the whole drug plot. I mean, we've done this quite a few times before in Bond. We did this in Live and Let Die, and I thought that was much better handled than Live and Let Die. You had drugs in the previous film, Living Daylights, the whole opium, and then you had some drug stuff in For Your Eyes Only. And I mean, this film does really feel kind of tired in some ways. I think Siskel and Ebert, when they reviewed this film, they complained about the plot being very generic. I mean, it is. I mean, by this point, this came out in 1989. The whole of the 80s, they were always focusing on drug cartels and gangster films like Scarface and all this stuff. And Miami Vice, you had drugs and sort of a drug plot going on, and it's just kind of we've seen this before, and I think it's a bit tired. But I mean, saying that, I mean, the film isn't completely awful. There's still, I think that there still is enough good stuff in here for me to say it's passable. But I'll get into that in a minute. I mean, I think all the stuff with Bond and Felix, where they're there with Della. I did like that reference to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where she throws that thing at him, and then she says, "Oh, what's his problem?" And he says, "Oh, we had a wife once, very long time ago." But that scene is quite brutal afterwards, where you see Dario there with his henchmen, and we see that Della gets killed, and Felix is nearly killed. And I mean, you have some interesting things here. Like, you got a Davi that I think he makes that deal with Felix's friend. He's like, "Oh, 2 million if you get me out of here." And there's that interesting sequence where he's in the van and he drives the van off the bridge, and he gets his scuba divers in to save Sanchez. But yeah, I mean, that whole sequence where Felix gets fed to the shark. I mean, I think it was actually in one of the Bond books. So they do take some stuff here from Ian Fleming, but the majority of the film is mostly original stuff. But yeah, I mean that sequence is quite dark, and you kind of feel bad for Felix. But I mean, I guess I'd say what they're trying to go for this film. They're trying to go for like a gritty revenge thriller, but I just don't think it works in a lot of ways. I mean, there is that scene where Bond comes in. There's that scene where Bond comes into Felix's house, and when he finds Della, she's like cross-eyed, and I think that's sort of implying that when she was raped, she went sort of cross-eyed, and then they shot her in the head, and it is a bit, I think, a bit too much for a Bond film. And then he finds, Felix covered in blood, and he says, "Oh, he disagreed with something that ate him." Um, so I get what I get what they're trying to go for. They're trying to go for a revenge thriller, but I think one of the problems with License to Kill as well is they're trying to have their cake and eat it. They're trying to go for like a dark. They're trying to go for like a dark, gritty tone, but they add in all this stupid comedy stuff, like with Professor Joe, the televangelist. Oh, bless your heart. And
to be fair, though, Jack, I mean, if
Yeah.
any of the Bond actors could pull this sort of film off, it would obviously be Craig. But in this instance, Timothy Dalton really, he could sell this movie.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Timothy Dalton is very good in this, but I think even if you put Daniel Craig in this, like it probably still, those problems still be sort of glaring, and I think that's one of the issues of License to Kill is that, like I said, they're trying to go for their cake and eat it instead of going for a dark revenge thriller. They're also trying to throw in this comedy with Professor Joe, the televangelist, and those ninjas, those random ninjas that appear out of nowhere.
From?
Yeah, I mean,
never understood where did the ninjas come from? Do they work for Sanchez or something? Like what?
Yeah, I mean that's weird. I mean, I'll get to that in a minute, but yeah, I mean, I think Bond's motivation here is good, and I do like that sequence where he's talking. I think he goes into this Milton Crest's place, and he has his hand in the drawer of maggots, and he fights this guy off, and he's trying to get information. And I do like the scenes of him and Sharky. He finds the guy who betrayed Felix. He's like, oh, and he's like, oh, there's $2 million in that suitcase. I'll split it with you. And Bond says, oh, you earned it. You keep it, old buddy. And then he throws the suitcase at him, and he falls into the water and he gets killed by the shark. And I do like Sharky's line afterwards, like, "Oh, what a terrible waste of money." That was quite funny. But I do think M is a bit of a dick in this film. He's a bit out of character, I will say. I mean, I've never been a big fan of oh god, what's his name?
Robert Brown.
Yeah, Robert Brown. That's it. Yeah, I've never been a big fan of Robert Brown as M, but I mean here I just think M's completely out of character. He's a real dick. That whole sequence, he's like, oh, your license to kill is revoked. We're not a country club 007, and Bond says, oh, it's a fair.
Originally, the title of the film was going to be License Revoked, and they changed it to License to Kill.
Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, that whole sequence, I do think is quite good. Where he's like, oh, I guess it's a farewell to arms, and then Bond runs off. But I just don't like the fact that M's like, oh, don't kill him. Too many people. It's like, for God's sake. I mean, Calvin Dyson pointed this out in his original review. This guy saved your ass so many times. He saved the world from all these megalomaniacs and terrorists and what have you. And you just say, oh, don't kill him. Too many people. And for God's sake, this guy's your best agent. But I mean, yeah, saying that, I mean, license revoked. I mean, this is the first Bond film, I think, which doesn't have an Ian Fleming title. Originally, it was going to be called License Revoked, but I think they were worried that American audience thought it meant like a driver's license, like hearing that title, License Revoked, so they changed it to License to Kill. But it's interesting that all the Bond titles from License to Kill onwards are all original titles until you get to Casino Royale with Daniel Craig. So I think there's strays.
I think Quantum of Solace was written in notes that were unused. Yeah. So technically that one counts as well, I suppose.
Yeah, you got Casino Royale and then Quantum of Solace. So yeah, this is the first Bond film to not use an Ian Fleming title, but Yeah, I mean, you got some interesting stuff here. Like you got Bond going to Isthmus City, which is this made up Mexican place, and I do like the scenes with Pam Bouvier. They're quite good. Although saying that, it's just kind of a typical, bar, bar fight that you'd see in movies at the time. You got Dario in there, and it's just I don't know that whole scene. You got the stripper dancing and stuff. It seems a bit too sleazy for a Bond film. Having a
Well,
stripper
Bond
dancing.
itself can never be too sleazy.
Yeah, no, but it just kind of feels a bit like. I mean, this film feels a bit grimy. It doesn't really feel like sort of classy because it's very gruesome with the deaths and stuff. But that scene where Bond gets away with Pam and they're in the boat and they kiss. I do like that scene. That scene's quite good. Although saying that, you got that cheesy line. Oh, well, why don't you wait till until you're asked? And he says, oh, well, then why don't you ask me or whatever it is. That was just kind of. I know. I think Bond says that. He says, oh, why don't you wait till you're asked? And she said, oh, why don't you ask me then?
Yeah,
But
so
yeah, I
they
mean,
flip it around for the ending, don't they?
yeah. I mean, I have to talk about Robert Davi as Sanchez. I mean, Robert Davi, I think, is a good actor, but I never really bought into him as Sanchez. I think he's a bit one note as the villain. He never really uh, raises his voice or get angry that much in the film. I mean, he's very calm and level headed, and he just doesn't. I just don't think he's that threatening of a villain. I mean, I think Robert Davi's a very good actor, but I just don't rate him that much as Sanchez. I mean,
Would
he's
you
just
say?
a sort of.
Sorry, Jack.
Sorry,
I
go ahead.
apologize. Would you say he's better than the villains from the previous film?
Yeah, he's better than Whitaker um, and Koskov because he's a bit more of a threat. But at the same time, I just think he's kind of your generic. I think he's your generic drug dealer. I mean, and I also like when he's talking to Bond throughout the film, he kind of talks to Bond like he's. Well, I mean, I know Bond's pretending to be his friend, but he just kind of talks to Bond like he's just a regular guy, whatever. And I mean, this may sound a bit of a weird criticism, but it just comes across as a bit too friendly sometimes. Sanchez, like he doesn't really raise his voice or get angry that much, and yeah, like I said, Robert Davi's a bit one note, but I mean, he's not awful in the film. I mean, he's definitely more of a threat than some of the other villains we've had in the series, but I don't think I'd rate him as one of the best Bond villains either. I don't think he'd be in my worst villains, but he wouldn't be in my top 10 best either. Um, but yeah, I mean, I do like some of the stuff there with Sanchez, like about loyalty. He values loyalty more than money, and I do think, you've got a young Benicio del Toro there as Dario, and I think he's quite good. And all the scenes in like Isthmus City are quite good. Where Bond, he gets all the money, and I do like that sequence where he sneaks aboard the boat and he's got the knife and he's putting it at Loopy's throat, and we see that she's sort of a prisoner, Sanchez. She can't really leave him, and I do like the sequence where he steals the plane and he throws all the money out of the plane. That's quite good. And I mean, one thing I will say though is I really didn't feel any impact when Sharky got killed. Like that whole sequence where they kill Sharky and they're like, oh, his real name was Sharky. It's just kind of like, for God's sake, John Glenn, we don't really need you to kill off another, ally once again, and then Timothy Dalton as Bond says, "Oh, compliments of Sharky," But yeah, one thing I will say as well is Timothy Dalton's hair in this, like his hairstyle in this, I think is really awful. He is probably the worst Bond hair of all the actors. Like the sort of 80s like hairdo that he's got looks a bit crap. But I mean, I do think one of the saving graces of this film is Pam Bouvier, and she's very good in this film. And when she comes in, with the haircut and the different outfit, and Bond sort of turns around and he's sort of stunned by her. That was quite good. And later on, when she's drinking the vodka martini, yeah, and you got that whole sequence as well where Bond, I think Q comes into and gives him this sort of dentonite toothpaste. I do like having Q in this film. Like, it's nice to have Q in the field, and I think Desmond Llewellyn said this is his favorite Bond film that he did because he got more to do in it. And it is nice that he gets a lot more to do. Like, he gives Bond that exploding clock and that alarm clock that it goes off, and he's like, "Oh, Q, I could have killed you." When he opens a door and he throws Q in the groin because he thinks he's like some assassin. But that's quite good. Although I do think the Dentonite toothpaste is a bit stupid. But yeah, then you got Dalton, and he's got the sniper, and he's going to kill Sanchez. He's like, "Oh, watch the birdie, you bastard!" And then you got the ninjas that appear out of nowhere. I just think that's ridiculous. I mean, the whole sequence of the ninjas, I think, is so stupid, and it's just completely jarring. It's like, are they trying to add this in for a cheap laugh? And it doesn't work. And then afterwards, I mean, I don't know if you'll agree with me, Ollie, but that whole sequence where Bond is, taken away and he's being tortured. Oh, sorry, no, he's being taken away, and it turns out he's got that palm-printed sniper, and then the ninjas are attacked, and then one of the ninjas takes some cyanide, and then one of the ninjas is dying, and they're talking to her in Chinese. I mean, I just you're supposed to sympathize with them, but I just didn't. I mean, I don't know about you, Ollie, but yeah.
Yeah, there's that weird shot where you see the ninja, like, she's like grieving or she's crying over the other dead ninja. They're like, "Leave him." No.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't know what the point of it is. It's such a weird scene. It literally comes out of nowhere. Presumably they work for Sanchez, but it's just like, when did he hire ninjas? Like, did he have words with Dr. Tanaka? No, not Dr. Tanaka. Sorry, Tiger Tanaka from You Only Live Twice.
Yeah, it's random. I don't know if it's meant to be a cheap laugh, but it's just really jarring. I mean, there is some good dialogue in here, I will admit. I do like that scene where Bond's talking to Sanchez, and he's like, "Oh, you're a problem solver." He's like, "More of a problem eliminator." That's very well done. But
Although, didn't you say that in your review that you didn't like Dalton's haircut?
yeah, I just mentioned that. I think Dalton's haircut is very 80s looking. He's definitely got the worst hair of all the Bonds.
Baby.
Yeah, I think Alan said it as well. His haircut in this film wasn't very good. And a lot of other people pointed out his hairdo. It's just very 80s. It's very dated.
It works for Bronson, but not for Dalton.
Yeah. One thing I will say as well is Dalton's very intense in this when he says, "Oh, I want a vodka martini shaken, not stirred." He says that very intense. And that makes me laugh a bit. I think one of the problems with this as well is like there is a lack of humor, but like I said again, they're trying to go this sort of down this route of let's make it a dark film, but let's also have stupid comedy moments. Like I said, that whole stuff with Professor Joe, the televangelist, he's like, "Oh, please donate, bless your hearts." It's so jarring because like you're going for this darker tone and then you're throwing in all this random comedy. It just doesn't work, and yeah, I just didn't like that. But I mean, like I said, there are some things I like. One line I think we all agree is awful, and I think Alan said that he was laughing, like he said the whole audience was laughing at it when they watched it in the cinema. Like there's that line where she comes to see Pam and she says, "Oh, I just love James so much." It's just the line is awful.
Yupper. I'll talk about it later.
Yeah, the delivery is awful. It just I didn't buy it at all. It's just so completely wooden.
I mean, her body makes up for it.
Yeah. I mean, she's good to look at. I will say she's one of the best visuals of the film. But yeah. But I mean, yeah. And then you've got some like interesting stuff here with Bond. After the ninjas attack him, he sort of you got that really random sequence where he wakes up in bed and there's this fish with like a human's face, like looking at like that he's looking at, and it's just such a random sequence. Like I don't know what the fuck that's doing in the film, but I mean, it's just...
He even jumps back. He's like, oh. Why would he be scared of that? I mean, he's a fucking agent who's killing everyone, and now. Yeah, he's scared of a fish.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think John Glen must have been in drugs when he made this film because it sort of explains the sort of...
Is it meant to kind of like be sort of a reference to the mafia, like kind of you're sleeping with the fishes? Like, that's the only reason.
It could be. I have no clue. I mean, I might have to watch the commentary or read something on why that shot is in the film, but it's really weird. But yeah. I mean, you do have some good stuff here. Like I do like all the stuff with Bond where he's trying to fool Sanchez, into believing him. He's like, "Oh, I'm an ex-British spy," and he says, "Oh, can you trust these people? Can you trust them?" And we see that he and Pam arrive and they put money in Milton Crest's boat, and you have that whole scene where Sanchez is like, "Oh, you want my money? You want it so bad? Then take it!" He throws him in the he throws him in the thing, and then he turns up the pressure, and then he blows up his head. Which, yeah, I just think is a bit too much for a Bond film. Yeah, just to see his head explode.
It's too bloody.
Yeah. Although I do like the line afterwards when someone says to Sanchez, "Oh, what do we do with the money?" And he says, "Oh, launder it." That was quite a good line. But yeah, I mean, you just got some like I said, random stuff in here. I think the finale in the drugs factory. I mean, it's kind of interesting, like when they're showing you how to make all the drugs. But I did find one of those characters annoying, that young guy with the briefcase, and he's like, "Oh, great,
$1 write-off."
Write-off." Yeah. Well, he's like, "Oh, well, I guess I have to make some cuts now." And then he shoots him.
Isn't he meant to be? He's meant to be like his lawyer or something. I mean,
yeah, something like that. Yeah, he's some kind of investor, who takes care of his finances. But yeah, I mean, that whole sequence is interesting, where Bond is, taking the tour of the drug factory. But yeah, that guy's so annoying. Like, great friends, another $80 million write-off. Like when Sanchez shot him, I was fucking thankful. That's all I'll say. But yeah, I mean, I do like that sequence where Bond gets spotted by Dario, and we do have quite a good scene where he's hanging on to the conveyor belt, and Dario's about to kill him, and and she's like, "Oh, he dead," and she's like, "Oh, you took the words right out of my mouth," and she shoots him, and he goes into the grinder, and it's a pretty gruesome death. You see the blood and see him getting chopped up in that grinder. Which I think is a bit too much. And yeah, the finale, I just kind of think blowing up the drugs factory, at the end, it's kind of a typical, oh, let's end the Bond film with blowing up the big base at the end. It's kind of seen that before. So they blow that up, but I think Bond sets the factory on fire, and then there's that guy gets in. I mean, you have got that one good. I thought it was quite a funny line, but at the same time, Dalton delivered it a bit awkwardly. Like when he sees the guy in the forklift, impaled on the forklift, Dalton says, "Oh, I guess he met a dead end," and it's a good line, but the way Dalton delivers it is a bit,
yeah.
he doesn't really deliver it the way
Stiff.
it should be. Yeah, a bit stiff. But yeah, I mean, some of the stuff with Pam there is a bit weird, where she's trying to, like she's with Professor Joe, and she's like, "Oh, I've got a surprise for you." He's like, "Oh, I love surprises," and then, she's like, "Oh," he's like, "Oh, bless your heart," and then later on when he's running away at the money, and then she grabs the money as she's driving past him in that cart, and he's like, "Oh, bless your heart," it's a bit much.
Yeah.
But
I don't know about you. Did you find this film a bit long? I did. I found it a bit too long.
Yeah, that's one other criticism. Thanks for reminding me that I was actually going to forget about mentioning that. But yeah, I really think the film is a bit too long. I think it's like 2 hours and 15 minutes or 2 hours and 10 minutes. I do think it does drag a bit. There are some action scenes that go on a bit too long, and I do think the film at times is a bit padded. One thing I will say though is I do like the ending where you got Bond in the tanker, and he flips the tanker over, and the guy shoots the rocket launcher and it misses him. I mean, it's a bit unrealistic, but that's a great stunt.
Awesome, actually. That probably the best scene in the film.
Yeah, I really like that, and I really like the the Bond theme arrangement by Michael Carmen. You know, the on the Spanish or Mexican guitar. You know, the you know, that's pretty epic. But yeah, I do like, you know, the bit where Bond's on the tanker and he's fighting Sanchez. He's got this machete. Then it goes off, and it, you know, there's oil everywhere, and I do like the ending where Sanchez, you know, he grabs Bond, and you know he's about to cut his head off. Like, he gets the machete, and he's like, "Oh, you could have had everything," and he says, "Oh, don't you want to know why?" And he gets like that lighter that says, "To Bond, love Felix and Della." And then he lights him up, and I would do admit it might be a bit gruesome the way he sort of, you know, is burnt alive. But I mean, that's a pretty epic scene where the whole tanker blows up, and you see Bond. He's just all bloody, and you know he's a complete mess. And I think, you know, this is years before Daniel Craig. Like, before this was Sean Connery and Roger Moore and George Lazenby. I don't think you ever seen Bond bleed or, you know, be so beat up and dirty and stuff. But I think this is the first time we've seen Bond really beaten up and bloody and dirty and all that, and that was quite good. I do like the ending where Palm's in the truck and she's like, "Get in." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, yes, ma'am." You know, that was quite good. But but one thing I will say, the ending is really cheesy. I do agree with Chris Stuckman in his review. Like, that whole bit where Felix is on the phone, he's like, "Hey, James, how are you?" It's like, for God's sake, you're so jovial. Your wife just got killed. You know, you've lost your leg. You know, and you're acting as though everything's fine. It's just that was a bit stupid. And I do think the ending where Bond is with Lupe, it's just so cliche. Like, Palm sees her and she starts, you know, getting upset, and then Bond jumps into the pool. And I think you pointed this out in the audio commentary we did, Ollie. You know, he would have died falling from that height into that swimming pool. Yeah. He would have hit the bottom of that swimming pool and died. But it's just kind of cheesy. You know, he gets in the pool and he drags her in, and she's like, "Why don't you wait until you're asked?" He's like, "Well, then why don't you ask me?" God, you got the worst scene of the whole fucking, one of the worst scenes of the whole fucking franchise, where you got the winking fish at the end. It's like, what the fuck? You're like,
such a dark film. Like, I mean, I can understand if it was maybe for a Roger Moore film, but for Dalton, no.
Yeah, it's just such a shit way, I think, to end the Dalton era. With that winking fish. Like, I remember watching this on TV with my mum, and like, I remember looking at her face when that fish winked to the camera, and the look in her face was like utter confusion, like, what the fuck? And it's just such a stupid sequence, you know, where the fish winks to the camera. It's like, is that fish a sentient being? You know, I thought it was just, you know, something that sprinkled water into the pool. You know, all of a sudden it's a sentient being.
That's the thing. It's so totally confused the film. It's just it's contradicting itself by having these stupid comedy moments. In a way, it's kind of the same issue that I have with For Your Eyes Only. It doesn't know what it wants to be. Like, obviously, License to Kill thinks it knows what it wants to be, but like you say, adding all this stupid humor doesn't serve it very well at all.
Yeah. And I think the ending song, I mean, oh God, you know, if you asked me to, I mean, just change my mind.
The fact that it's with License to Kill, the darkest Bond movie in the series, like, no way. That's just ridiculous.
And not only that, just as a piece of music, it is shit. You know, if you asked me to, it's the biggest piece of 80s cheese and like,
it's
crap.
humble.
Yeah, it's just it's like a lovey-dovey romance song with this dark film.
I mean, she sings well. I'll give her that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a crap song. But yeah, that's the end of the Timothy Dalton era. Oh. Yeah.
I mean, we will do our ratings and ranking at the end as well.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that. Sorry.
Yeah, or ranking of the two films. Yeah, but
yes.
In conclusion, I think License to Kill is a bit of a mess, to be honest. I think, you know, when I first saw it on video, quite a few years ago. I remember buying it on video and watching it. I wasn't even impressed with it when I first watched it. It's never really left a big impression on me. And I know there's a lot of fans out there who love it and say it's one of the best Bond films. But I just think, I just think the audiences weren't ready for this kind of film. I mean, I think The Living Daylights, the audience, if they got more of a film like The Living Daylights, the audience, I think, would have accepted Dalton a lot more because it had that right balance of espionage and darkness with humor. But here, Bond's completely stripped of his humor. I think his motivations are good, but it's just the tone of the movie that's really jarring. Like you have all this dark stuff, but then you have all this comedic stuff with Professor Joe, the televangelist, and the random ninjas that appear out of nowhere, and the winking fish, and stuff like that. I mean, there are good things as well. I do like the fact that Desmond Llewellyn gets more to do as Q. There are some good action scenes here, I will admit, but I do think the film is too long. It is a bit of a mess tonally, and it didn't do well at the box office that year. I think it was up against a lot of big competition like Batman and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So it sort of flopped, I think, in America. It didn't do that well financially. And, the series after this sort of went on a 6-year hiatus. And it is a shame that Timothy Dalton never got to do a third Bond film because I thought he was excellent in the role. And maybe if Roger Moore left a little bit earlier, we could have had a few more films with Dalton, or maybe if there weren't all those issues with the rights after this film, we could have had a third film with Dalton. But sadly, it wasn't to be, and I thought he was excellent in the role. He's not my favorite Bond, but he captured that essence of Fleming. He sort of, brought it back to what Bond should be. And I mean, I think my only criticism was he wasn't that great with the charm and some of the humor, and it's a shame that he gets next to no humor in this film. But nonetheless, I thought overall, I think his era is a bit of a mixed bag. The first one I think is great, and License to Kill I think is not as great. I mean, but saying that, I still think there's enough good stuff in here, so I'm going to give this a marginal pass of 6 out of 10. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Jack. Thank you. So now we pass over to Alan. Alan, what do you make of Timothy Dalton's swan song, License to Kill?
License to Kill, eh? Timothy Dalton's second and sadly final Bond film. Okay, well, hope you guys can indulge me for a moment. Cue the music. Just a moment. Yeah. Welcome to tonight's episode of Miami Vice. Tonight, James Bond joins Crockett and Tubbs on an adventure to take down drug lord Sanchez. Late 80s haircuts, late 80s clothing everywhere you look. Tonight's episode, License to Kill.
That was a fantastic intro.
Thank you. Yeah, there you go. That's the Miami Vice theme tune, in case you haven't guessed it. Yeah, I've always said License to Kill isn't so much a James Bond movie as it feels like an extended 2-hour episode of Miami Vice, because this movie was from the late 80s, and everything you see in License to Kill looks like it came out of the show Miami Vice, which is not to say that Miami Vice was a bad show. I mean, for goodness sake, it was a hugely popular show back in the 80s, but, you got a drug lord, everybody's got the late 80s clothing, the late 80s haircuts, and it has a very NBC TV movie look to it rather than a movie look to it. It's like it's one of the least cinematic looking of all the Bond movies because it looks like
I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
Actually, funnily enough, Alan, Gene Siskel also agrees with you when he was reviewing the film with Roger Ebert. He said it felt more like a TV movie, or it didn't have that feel the other Bond films cinematic feel. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like a TV movie blown up for the big screen. And yet, the funny thing is that I've noticed over the years is that when I say to people, fellow Bond fans, that I just think License to Kill is okay. I mean, for goodness sake, I don't hate License to Kill. It's not without its entertaining stuff. It's like some Bond fans the ones who really love Timothy Dalton, I mean, they really, really get pissed off if you say you don't like License to Kill so much. They think it's great. They think it's Dalton's best movie, and some of them even pick License to Kill as like the best James Bond movie ever, something like that. I mean, to each their own, but you know, I don't hate License to Kill. I just think it's okay. And when it comes to the pair of Dalton movies, I mean, I've always liked Living Daylights the best. License to Kill, I mean, it's okay. There's definitely things in it that I like, but my main issue with the film, as others have said, is that this is way too violent for a Bond movie. Way too violent. I mean, a lot of it is gratuitous violence, and I mean, somehow the movie just managed to get away with a PG-13 rating here in the States, but it really should have been R. I mean, just the scene where a guy's head blows up, you know, it's like, and the movie was still PG-13, really. I just think they went too far with the violence in this one, and I think this was way too gritty a Bond movie, certainly for its time. I just think they went a little too far with the grittiness and too far with the violence. Timothy Dalton is still really good, still very commanding as James Bond, although they give him a horrible haircut. This is like the worst haircut I've seen since George Lazenby. I mean, he looks like a bad guy rather than a good guy in this movie. He has a very sinister...
That was because he was trying to pretend like to Sanchez that he was being his friend. Maybe that's why they did it, but I do agree it does look silly on him.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. I mean, Dalton has a very sinister kind of look in this movie, and he shouldn't. I mean, he's supposed to be James Bond, you know. So the violence I think is too much. I mean, for goodness sake, I mean, Felix Leiter gets his leg bitten off by a shark. I mean, his wife is raped and killed. Another character falls into a grinder. Another character gets shish kebab by a bulldozer or something like that. Another character gets his head blown up. Another character gets taken off screen to get his heart cut out, and on and on and on. I mean, just a lot of gratuitous violence for a Bond movie. I just think they went way too far with the violence in this one. I mean, on the one hand, I can understand them wanting to do something a little different, but I just think they took the aggressiveness a little too far in this one. And my cat Sunny just walked into the room. Sunny, I'm recording. I'm doing a session right now. Shh, be quiet, kitty. Be quiet, kitty. But anyway, but I mean, Dalton is good, but this is not the best plot he could ever have been given. And again, it just feels too much like a Miami Vice episode. Regarding the rest of the cast, I mean, he's got a good cast. I mean, I do like Robert Davi a lot as the villain Sanchez. I mean, I think he is evil personified. I mean,
he's a freak.
No, I mean, he's a total slime ball, but I think he really works it as a very evil drug lord. I mean, you would not want to meet this guy in a dark alley. You would never want to cross him. I mean, just when he's lowering Felix Leiter into the pit to be killed or mauled or whatever by the shark, you know, I'll see you in hell, Sanchez. And Sanchez says, today is the first day of the rest of your life. You know, I mean, what a great line, what a great evil line to say. And then later on, when he kills another guy by throwing him into that chamber, and his head depressurizes and blows up, and there's all this money in the chamber, and somebody says to Sanchez, "What do we do with the money?" Sanchez says, "Launder it." You know, I think he's a great villain. I think he's a really truly great villain. But again, he seems to be a TV villain rather than a movie villain, but he's still a very evil, very effective villain. So I do like Robert Davi a lot. I mean, for me, he's one of the best things in the movie besides Dalton, in my opinion. So I like Robert Davi a lot. You get to see a young Benicio del Toro in this movie, younger and slimmer as one of Davi's henchmen, and he does have a memorable line regarding the death of Felix Leiter's wife. Yeah, we gave her a nice honeymoon. That's a great line. I think he's a memorable henchman, so I like him. Regarding the Bond women, they're both beautiful. One is a good actress, one is not. But
guess who?
Nice. Yeah, I mean, they're nice to look at least. I mean, Talisa Soto is the not so good actress in this one. I mean, beautiful woman. I mean, she's beautiful, but just not the greatest of actresses. Yes, Loopy. And yeah, she gets to say that stupid line later on in the movie. I love James so much, and she's only known James for like what?
Let's give her a
night.
hand for that. I mean,
And I saw License to Kill at the theater back in '89. Everybody in the theater was laughing when she said that line because it's a stupid line and she said it poorly, and it's just total ham acting. You know,
why would John Glenn allow that? Like he's done better. I mean, come on. Like he's taken a lot in his time as a Bond director. Like surely that isn't good enough. Like if I were directing, I would say no. Come on, we got to keep taking that till you get it right. You know.
Yeah. And anyway, how can you be in love with Bond when you've only known him for like one day? You know.
Yeah.
It's a stupid line. It shouldn't even be there. Maybe it's
I mean,
not
even the film acknowledges how stupid it is because Pam does an impression of her. She's like, "I just love James so much."
Yeah. It's a bad line. I mean, maybe it was a disservice to Talisa Soto to make her say it. They should have just kept it out of the script, and that would have solved the problem right there. I mean, as I say, Talisa Soto, beautiful woman, but not the greatest of actresses. I'm sorry to say. You might know her from the Mortal Kombat movies. I think she was in the Mortal Kombat films as well. But just not the greatest of actresses. Beautiful woman, but not the greatest of actresses. The other Bond woman is Carrie Lowell as Pam Bouvier, and I like her a lot. I think she's very good. I think she and Dalton have good chemistry. Beautiful woman, but she plays a CIA informant, and she can definitely take care of herself. I think she's quite good in this movie, and a good actress. Yeah, her acting is good, much better than Talisa Soto, if I have to be honest. So I thought she was very good for what she had. Yeah, Robert Brown as M. This is his final appearance as M, and I'm glad. Because he's just not. He's my least favorite M of all time, and he is a total prick in this movie, where he basically shows no compassion, no sympathy towards Bond whatsoever. Even though Bond's friend Leiter has been maimed by a shark, his wife has been killed, and M doesn't seem to give a shit. So when Bond says, then you have my resignation, sir, maybe he should have said, then you have my resignation, you asshole, or something like that. Because I have no, I mean, M is just a prick in this movie. He's just a prick. So I'm glad this is the last appearance of Robert Brown. Just he's never been my favorite M. He's okay, but here he's just a total prick. I just don't like him. I do like, however, that Desmond Llewellyn as Q gets a lot to do in this movie. He doesn't just show up and give Bond his gadgets. He actually stays along for the adventure and helps out Bond a bit. So Q gets the most he ever gets to do in any movie. And I think that's probably why Desmond Llewellyn said that for him, License to Kill was his favorite Bond film, because he got a lot to do in it. He wasn't just do the giving Bond his gadgets scene. I mean, he got to hang around and do a bit more. And of course, Desmond Llewellyn, wonderful in the part. So it's great to see him here. Let's see what else. Looking at the other people in the cast. Yeah, Wayne Newton of Donkey Shane fame. Donkey Shane. Yeah, he plays Professor Joe Butcher, who's like a televangelist kind of guy. Bless your heart. He's amusing in the movie. I mean, it's Wayne Newton, but he's amusing. I'll give him that. And
Yeah.
he lends whatever little humor can be lent to the movie whenever he shows up. But and again, I mean, there's some good action stuff in here. I mean, I do like the opening action scene where Bond and Leiter they go after Sanchez, and Bond is hanging from the helicopter and hangs the hooks on the rear of the plane. That's a good action scene. There's some good underwater stuff in here. I like the bar fight scene. That's good. I think that's the scene where Bond and Bouvier meet in this one. Let's see. There, of course, the tanker truck chase at the end, which actually reminds me of that classic Steven Spielberg movie Duel, with the lone Dennis Weaver being chased on a lonely road by a mysterious oil tanker driver. murderous oil tanker driver. So that oil tanker truck chase reminded me of Duel, and that's very well done. Apparently, that road that they shot that truck chase on was haunted. That a lot of nasty stuff happened on that road, and if you watch the documentary about the making of the movie, that it was a cursed road, and somebody in the crew took a photograph during I guess when an explosion went off, and one of the explosions, the flame from the explosions looks like a claw. It looks like a claw. It's very, very spooky. But I do think the action scene is very, very good. I mean, Dalton is good in this. I mean, this is the movie where Bond turns rogue, where he goes against M's orders. He refuses to obey, and that lends Dalton a lot of grittiness and toughness to his performance. He has very few bits of humor, if any. I mean, the few bits of humor is when he's arguing with Bouvier in the boat. You saved my life. That's one of the few humorous bits Dalton is allowed, but otherwise he's serious in this movie. I mean, Dalton's great. I don't like his haircut, but otherwise he's still really good as Bond. But this is a movie that's very tonally confused. I don't hate it. There's definitely things in it that I like, but I just think it's too violent, too dark. A lot of the violence in it is gratuitous, especially for a Bond movie, and that really weighs this movie down for me like a ball and chain. And then, of course, after all this darkness and grittiness in the movie, as you guys said earlier, the movie ends with a winking fish, of all things. That's your last image in a Timothy Dalton Bond movie, the winking fish.
Not just that, in his whole entire era.
Yeah. That's your final image of the Dalton era, the winking fish.
Yeah, and, I'd rather have fish and chips and see that again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the hell they were thinking. That was so stupid, especially considering the darkness and grittiness, of this movie, and then they end with a winking fish in a swimming pool. I don't know what to make of that. So this,
I'm starting to think that the people making this film were actually on drugs.
They probably were. Oh, and then of course, I also have to mention the ninjas that come from out of nowhere. Where did they come from? Why are they in this movie? They add nothing to the plot. They don't need to be there at all. I don't get it. Why were they shoehorned into this movie? I don't get it. So I look at License to Kill, and there are parts of it that I like, parts of it that I find entertaining, but it's still too violent. It feels like an extended episode of Miami Vice. It feels like a TV movie rather than a cinematic movie. And it's just too dark and gritty for its own good. And it's a damn shame that this was the last one that Dalton did, that he wasn't allowed to do another one due to some ridiculous legal stuff that cropped up between, I guess, Eon Productions and the film studio about who owned the rights to the Bond series. And then this legal stuff dragged out in the courts for 6 years. And no more Bond movies could be made until the legal stuff cleared. And by the time it did finally clear, Dalton decided to walk away. That too much time had passed since he played Bond, and who could blame him for walking away? Although Dalton is on record saying that if his third Bond movie had been ready to go into production on time, he would have done it, no problem. But because of all this legal stuff going on, he wasn't allowed to do it. And then in the end, he just said, fuck it. And he walked away. And it was goodbye, Timothy Dalton. Hello, Pierce Brosnan. So that's. Just
wasn't he was offered Goldeneye, I think, but then he thought by that point he was too old, and he decided he thought, no, I'll leave.
Not only that, but Cubby Broccoli wanted him to do more than one Bond film if he was coming back. He wanted him to do several Bond films. So I think that was another factor as to why he left. But yeah.
Well, and then the fact he just felt too much time had passed since he last did a Bond film, and then also License to Kill was not a box office success as well. I think it just wasn't the kind of Bond movie that audiences wanted. Really, it was just too dark and gritty, and with all this drug smuggling, Miami Vice stuff going on in it, and it just wasn't all that appealing. And I don't recall what other big hit movies were released in 1989 Was the first Tim Burton Batman movie
Yeah.
in '89? Okay.
And Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So there were some other summertime movies because this was released in the summertime of '89, and the 007 got overshadowed by Indiana Jones, by Batman, and again you had this dark and gritty, violent James Bond movie, and it just did not interest audiences in general. And it's a damn shame that this was the last one for Dalton, but oh well, things happen beyond his control. He's good, but the movie to me just kind of falls down the middle. Again, I don't hate License to Kill. There are things in it that I like, but it's just too damn dark and violent for its own good. And I think The Living Daylights is the better movie. When you look at the two Dalton films, I think The Living Daylights is definitely the much more entertaining of the two. So it's a shame Dalton went out with this one, but oh well, what happened happened. What's done is done. But he was indeed a great Bond for sure. It's a shame he didn't do any more, but at least he can brag that he played Bond longer than George Lazenby. And I do like The Living Daylights a whole lot, but License to Kill, I'm just going to give License to Kill an average, middle of the road, 5 out of 10.
Well, thank you, Alan. Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, License to Kill. Okay, I won't make this too long because I think by the time we finish, it should just be about time. Okay, License to Kill, Timothy Dalton's second and unfortunately final Bond film. Nobody expected it to be his last one when it was released, but oh well. Yeah, License to Kill. This has always been a very, I guess, kind of a polarizing Bond film for me. When I first watched it, I didn't really know what to make of it because it was so different to the other ones. It does feel like they took the tone of the Living Daylights, raped it, beat it to shit, and literally amplified it 100 times over. I mean, it might sound a bit extreme the way I'm talking about it, but I think everything about this film is extreme. I just think it's, literally everything is balls to the wall. Let's go as far as we can. Let's make this different as we possibly can, which I appreciate. They want to do something different, fine, but they haven't thought about this properly, because for me, License to Kill, while I respect people's opinions, obviously the film has earned much more appraisal probably since the Daniel Craig era. I just feel this film is tonally confused. It's tonally wrong. I mean, not that the film doesn't know what it wants to be. It knows full well what it wants to be, but it doesn't execute it very well because it tries
Does it?
Yeah, well, it tries to compromise itself by, it's like, okay, well, we'll make this so dark and really dark and gritty, but they didn't want to compromise without any light relief, which is fine, but they don't know their limits, and that's the problem with this film, like, on both sides of the coin. Like, this stupid comedy of this film, just, it doesn't fit and it doesn't work. Like, the Professor Joe stuff, I mean, that's not so bad, but it's still unnecessary. The fucking ninjas that come out of nowhere. What the fuck was that? I mean, that was a load of shit. And of course the stupid winking fish at the end. I mean, oh Christ almighty. But on the flip side of that, you get a very violent, dark, almost kind of unpleasant movie. License to Kill, I mean, it's not a film that really brings me much joy, if I'm going to be honest. Not that I hate it. I don't hate it. It's fine. Like, it's perfectly passable, like middle of the road, under average film. And it is different, so that's one thing it does. I mean, it is a unique film, and it is the darkest film of the Bond franchise. Yes, I think it's darker than Casino Royale. And, I mean, in terms of the Bond actor, I mean, Timothy Dalton is great in the movie. There's no question about that. But he's not allowed the chance to have any humor. He is very humorless in this film. He's driven to a very personal vendetta. The problem I also have with this film is Bond is supposed to go on an emotional arc. Like, okay, he has, his best friend's leg was bitten off by a shark. His best friend's wife was killed, and he's out for revenge. By the end of the film, he is the same person who he was in the beginning. He hasn't evolved as a character because, if you're going to establish an emotional story arc, then fall through with it. the problem I have is the fact that, I mean, yeah, he just kills Sanchez. I mean, okay, fine, we all wanted to see Sanchez die, but it shows that Bond couldn't let go. Like, revenge is a fool's game, as was once quoted. So, how much it would have been more interesting if perhaps Bond wasn't the one to kill Sanchez, if Sanchez died on his own terms. So, I just think the emotional arc of the story doesn't work, and it feels redundant.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go on. What were you going to say?
I know. I was agreeing with you. I think what you're saying is 100% correct. I think it would have been more impactful maybe if this revenge just went too far for him, and personally he fucked up or something like that. Like, have some consequences, like Skyfall does. You know, when he gets shot and then he falls off the train, and then he thinks he can go back into the field when he's hardly recovered and stuff. It's like you said, he hasn't changed as a character. It'd be interesting if he came very close to death when trying to fight off Sanchez, but like you said, he doesn't really go in the character arc. He's just sort of the same guy. But yeah.
And I'm gonna. I know Alan hates this film, but I'm gonna compare this to Quantum of Solace. Say what you will about Quantum of Solace, but the end of Quantum of Solace is good because it shows Bond has evolved and he has learned to let go of Vesper, and he has learned that if he keeps going on this vendetta of revenge, he's going to become obsessive and he's going to lose himself. And I think that's why I would have liked License to Kill to do that. If you're going to establish this dark, gritty, emotional tone, then go through with it. Otherwise, don't bother. It just seems like they wasted their time doing this, to be honest. Like, I just don't think they constructed the story as well as they could have done. They're trying to appease to the Bond fans of old, but also doing something that's much different. Like Alan said, it's an episode of Miami Vice. And I just think the emotional tone of the film is all over the place. Actually, the tone just generally is all over the place. It is too violent, and that's the biggest problem. Like, the death scenes are too bloody, too graphic. Even Sanchez's death is a bit too extreme for me. Not that I can't take that stuff, but I just think it's the fact that it's a Bond movie. It's just too much. I think they should have simplified the tone a lot. I don't know.
It's not really family entertainment like the previous ones, is it?
Yeah, no. This is a more adult film. You can't subject your children to this. This is not a kids' film. There's quite a bit of swearing in this film, as far as I'm aware. The people say shit a lot. I don't think they say the F word, but there is like shit and all of that stuff thrown around there. They do cuss quite a lot. But actually, I do have to say, I do quite like Sanchez, the villain. I mean, he's gone up in my estimation, actually. I'm not saying he's the best villain of the franchise. I'm not saying that at all. But I actually quite like him. I think he's a slimy prick, and he's pretty menacing, and I like Darby's performance. I'm sorry, Jack, I do have to disagree with you slightly. I do think he does raise his voice on a few occasions, but when it's warranted, especially towards the end. But I do think him and Bond could have had more of a final confrontation. But like I said, I just don't think Bond should have killed him just based on the emotional arc of the story. But Sanchez is a real prick. I mean, the way we're introduced to him, we immediately know this guy's an arsehole. I mean, he whips his own girlfriend. I mean, yeah, okay, she cheated on him, but with good reason. So, to be fair, yeah. But I think Robert Darby's decent. He's pretty good. The Bond girls are a mixed bag for me. Carrie Lowell as Pam Bouvier. I like Pam very much. I think Pam's pretty kick-ass. She's cool, and she's pretty good at outsmarting Professor Joe. Bless your heart. But yeah, I mean, and she does actually have some decent chemistry with Timothy Dalton. But oh god, Talisa Soto as Loopy. Yeah, I mean, I just love James so much. Need I say more?
Yeah, she deserves an Oscar for that line delivery.
Yeah, more like a Razzie. Look, I won't go that far, but I mean, she's attractive. She is an incredibly beautiful woman, and she has the looks. She really is stunning. She's a stunning babe, but her acting is terrible. In this film, most lines are delivered as flat as a pancake. So I can't really give her a pass, to be honest. So I'm sorry, but she's good eye candy. And again, that's probably why she was cast. So I don't think it's really an insult to say that. So yeah, again, Caroline Bliss's Moneypenny, she gets nothing to do in this film, so I can't really talk about much about her. But again, she's just kind of boring. That's all I can say. Robert Brown, I agree. M is a dick in this film. Like he's totally he's being way too hard on Bond. I mean, surely he knows that these are Bond's friends, and there is a lot of personal cost to him. I can understand his point about Bond going rogue, but at the same time, his reaction afterwards is just too overblown. And I just thought Robert Brown's M was never really that appealing to me. I much prefer Judi Dench and Ralph Fiennes to Robert Brown, to be honest, and Bernard Lee, of course. So yeah, Robert Brown, jog on, as far as I'm concerned. But I do agree.
I'd be surprised. Sorry to interrupt. I'd be surprised to find anyone who'd say that he's the best M. But yeah,
no, I don't think many people do. I think some people like him, but I don't think he's considered to be the best, which is probably for the best. Lol. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, Q. Desmond Llewellyn gets more to do in this film, which is great. As Q, it's nice every so often when they expand his role. I do appreciate that. Considering he's not got many films left in the series, it's nice that this is kind of, I guess, his last sort of his most major role in the franchise. I mean, it makes sense as to why he's coming out. I mean, he clearly cares about Bond in some fashion. To come all that way, track him down to give him the gadgets.
When you said he was coming out, I thought you meant coming out of the closet for a minute.
Oh, God's sake. No, I didn't mean that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice that he traveled all that way, to give him the gadgets. I mean, shows how much he cares. I mean, even if the gadgets are a bit shit, at least Bond knows that he cares. I love how he obviously when he says to Pam, "Oh, this is my uncle Q." That's kind of funny. Timothy Dalton is great in the film. I mean, again, he still lacks the charm. Again, that's not really his fault. It's the script. He doesn't get the chance to be charming. But he does have some pretty good lines, like you said, when he throws the money into the little pool before the guy gets eaten by the shark. He says, "You've earned it. You keep it, old buddy." And other ones like, "Oh, you're bloody lucky to be alive." And when he's hanging off the conveyor belt, when he's like, "Switch the bloody machine off," or God, it's. I mean, Dalton's not the most. He isn't the most charming, but he's pretty good. And there's a scene when he threatens Pam Bouvier, and she says, "Oh, there's more to this than your personal vendetta." So he does a good job at showing Bond's inner turmoil, like his grief. But again, it's the payoff to the emotional arc that doesn't work. When he says, "Don't you want to know why?" I mean, I suppose they were trying to go for the fact that the lighter, the fact that Bond. Lights him was the payoff, but perhaps Sanchez could have used it on his own and killed himself by accident. That's just what I would have done. But and the end is kind of the ending is so cheesy when Bond says to Lupe, "I think you and El Presidente will make a wonderful couple," and he jumps in the pool, which should have killed him really from that height, but oh well, he's James Bond. then he goes to Pam and it's like, "Why didn't you wait until you were asked?" "So why don't you ask me?" And then that stupid fucking fish. Oh, get a rock and throw him back in the sea.
Yeah. John Glen should be sleeping with the fishes. Only joking.
Yeah. Stupid fucking song. Oh my god. Oh.
You asked me to.
That fucking song is awful. I mean, not just that, the fact that it's in this dark, gritty film at the very end, it just, it again, tonal inconsistency. What the fuck is going on? Like, I mean, I know people love this film, but surely they've got to see there are some tonal things going on here. But yeah, I mean, again, also I do agree the film is too long. It's like 2 hours 13 minutes. It really could have been trimmed a bit. It does drag during the middle for me. I do, however, like some of the action scenes. Like that tanker chase is fucking amazing. I love the finale of this film when they have the tankers. I mean, the wheelie moment with the tanker is a bit unrealistic, but it's still pretty cool. It's a great Bond moment, and it's on a big scale as well, which I like. But yeah, some of the action probably goes on a bit long. The opening action is pretty cool when they're about to get to the wedding, and they Bond manages to hook the plane onto the Sanchez's plane. That's cool. When Bond takes the money in the little plane, that's pretty cool. Although Sharky as a character, I think is totally unnecessary. He's just there to die. Like, he's another character to die. I suppose he's there to add some emotional weight to the story and to Bond's character, but to drive Bond further and further into revenge. But Sharky comes off as just a knockabout comedy character who's I mean, they call him Sharky just as a joke, because he gets killed by a shark or something, and it's like, guess what? His name was Sharky. It's like, oh, yeah.
Compliments of Sharky.
Yeah, I do like that though. When Dalton he shoots the harpoon gun, he's like, compliments of Sharky. Yeah, and there's another underwater action scene. Well, we could have done without that, but oh well. Yeah, sorry, I just don't rate underwater action in Bond films. It's tedious. But yeah, and also the music score by Michael Kamen is good. I like the soundtrack, even though it's probably not the best soundtrack of the series, but he did a good job, and I agree about the opening gun barrel. It is pretty good. I forgot to mention the Living Daylights had a good gun barrel as well. But License to Kill, I mean, it is a very weird Bond movie in that it's just totally confused. The comedy doesn't work. Things come out of nowhere that don't make sense. Oh, and one more thing. The song, the Gladys Knight song, I actually quite like the song, but it probably doesn't fit the film. It is cheesy, but it's probably one of the better Bond songs in the 80s. That being said, I wouldn't
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, I wouldn't put it in my top 10 best Bond themes or the top 10 worst. I mean, it's good. Like, it's good. It'll do. And the lyrics make sense, which is one thing. And the title sequence is probably one of the weakest of the series. It's just random. Like, it doesn't relate to anything in the film. It's just, okay, women dancing around, Timothy Dalton's in the sequence, casino chips. Yeah, and that's it. It's not that inventive, to be honest. Yeah, I do quite like David Hedison. It's nice to have him back as Felix. It's quite graphic when his leg has been off by the shark, and when Dario says to him, "Oh, don't worry, we gave her a nice honeymoon." That's quite a good line. I actually really like Dario, Benicio del Toro, a young, slim Benicio del Toro. Yeah, he's pretty good in this film. I mean, his death is interesting when he sees Pam on the other side of the conveyor belt, and he's like, "You dared! You took the words right out of my mouth," and she just shoots him, and he falls down. I mean, his death is a bit grisly, but I do like Benicio del Toro. He's pretty creepy, actually. He has that really weird smile. He's got big teeth, doesn't he? So he's got a very evil grin. And of course, sorry.
I was just going to say, what did you think of that shot at the beginning of the film? I think Calvin Dyson pointed out it, like when they're like running in slow motion, it's like da 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 da. Like, it's found that a bit weird, but
yeah, that was a little bit strange, to be honest. Actually, there was one moment I forgot to mention. I don't think you guys have talked about it. There's a moment when they reference On Her Majesty's Secret Service, when Della takes the ribbon thing off her leg. She's like, the next one who catches this is the next one who, and he's like, no, thank you. And then Felix said, oh, he was married once. So they referenced Tracy, which is nice. I mean, the 20-year payoff, I suppose, because obviously 20 years ago, Lazenby was Bond. So I like that. I appreciated that. Yeah, it doesn't feel like a James Bond movie, and that's kind of the problem. It's okay to do something different, but if you go, you need to know your limits, and I think that's the lesson this film needed to learn, was know your limits, because it goes too far in a lot of areas, and like you say, it just feels like an episode of Miami Vice. It doesn't feel like James Bond. and the emotional arc is getting lost. It is messy in its structure. I can't deny it. And I think John Glen sort of lost his way with it. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't entertained by it. I do think there are some great action scenes, and I think Dalton is good. I mean, this is his last performance, which is sad. So it's hard not to appreciate it in that regard. You've got a decent villain, some great funny moments here and there, but there's a lot of comedy beats that don't work. It's a tonally confused film to the umpteenth degree, and Desmond gets a bigger role, so that's nice. So it's a very mixed bag, but it's severely under average. So for me, the second and final Timothy Dalton Bond film, License to Kill, I'm gonna have to give it a 6 out of 10. It's not my favorite Bond film of the series at all, and I do feel sorry for Dalton. It's a damn shame he had to go out with this one, because I would have loved to have seen him do at least one more. I think doing a third one would have been nice, but oh well, it's too late now.
Yeah,
pretty much. Sorry, go on.
Ahead.
No, go on.
Maybe if they asked him to, he would come back. But yeah.
I think the signal's breaking. Anyway, so that's pretty much the Timothy Dalton era. Yep, 2 movies. That's it. So before we go, I will get Jack and Alan and myself to rate the movies and rank them. I mean, there's only 2 movies, so this shouldn't be difficult. And just summarize the era overall and what they think. So I'm going to come to Jack first. So Jack, please rate the 2 Dalton films and rank them, and then give us the overall summary.
It was going to be very tough to rank all 2 of his films. Overall, before I rank them, I'd put number 2 would be License to Kill, and then number 1 would be Living Daylights. And
what about number 0?
Yeah. What about number 1.5? Yeah. I think, I'd give License to Kill 6 out of 10 and Living Daylights 9 out of 10. So overall, out of 20, that's 15 out of 20. So,
not bad.
I mean, that's pretty, it's pretty good overall. I think Dalton's era is a bit of a mixed bag. I like one of his films. The other one, I give it a marginal pass. So, I mean, just briefly reflecting on Timothy Dalton, I thought Timothy Dalton was really good as James Bond. He sort of changed the pace after Roger Moore, and I agree with Alan. I think maybe the public just wasn't really ready for Dalton as Bond, or the sort of dark, gritty take on Bond. I think they were ready when it came to Living Daylights, but I think with License to Kill, the fact that it went so dark and so,
extreme.
Extreme. I think people just were sort of put off by it, and I can understand why, because, I mean, this is only a few years after Roger Moore had left the role. This is 89, and Roger Moore had left in 85, so I can understand the public just weren't ready for that. And I think, at the time, Dalton, after he left, he wasn't really highly regarded, and I think I saw some press stuff for Tomorrow Never Dies or Goldeneye, and they were talking about Brosnan, and they were saying, they were saying he was way better than Dalton. They were just kind of laughing about Dalton because they thought he was crap. But I think, Dalton over the years has got a lot more appreciation, especially since the Daniel Craig era. I think a lot of people have come to recognise that he's very good as Bond, and he sort of left that template. And I thought he was excellent. He really brought that, Ian Fleming character to life. He was probably, up until that point, the closest to the character. I think him and Daniel Craig are the closest to Ian Fleming's vision. I think my only criticism of Dalton was maybe he wasn't the best when it came to charming the ladies, and maybe he wasn't the best when it came to delivering a one-liner. He didn't have the best delivery, but overall I thought he was very good. I think maybe it would have been better if he been given a better script for License to Kill, and it is a shame he never got to do a third Bond film, because I think if he got to do a third film, he really could have proved himself to be a great Bond. I think if he was given at least 1 or 2 more movies, he could have gone on to prove that he was an excellent Bond. But I still think he was very good for what he was. But it's a shame he only got 2 films, but still one more than Lazenby. So, Yeah, I also think just briefly talking about John Glen, because this is his last film. I think John Glen was a mixed director. I really like The View to a Kill and Living Daylights, but I'm not that keen on Octopussy or For Your Eyes Only or License to Kill. So I think he's a very mixed bag of director. And I think maybe the argument of License to Kill was he stayed on too long. I think Living Daylights would have been the best time to leave the series. He was the only Bond director for the 80s, and he's the Bond director who's done the most films, 5 films. So maybe he stayed on for one Bond film too many. But um, yeah, and yeah, Dalton, I think he could have been a great Bond. Maybe if Roger Moore left a bit earlier, he could have had at least 4 films. Like if he'd started with Octopussy, that would have been good. He could have had 4 films, but it wasn't to be. And later on, because of all the rights issues, and it took so long to get GoldenEye out, he didn't come back. So I think overall his era is a mixed bag. But I thought Dalton was very good. And yeah, so yeah, I mean Dalton, I kind of wish he'd stayed on a bit longer, but yeah, I think he was a good Bond, and definitely I'd say he'd just be below the middle of my list of the ranking of the Bond actors. He'd probably be in number 4 when it comes to ranking the Bond actors. But yeah, I thought he was very good, and I salute him for giving his contribution to the series. So that's all I have to say. So I'll pass the mic over to Alan now.
Okay, Timothy Dalton's 2 films. Well, again, it's an easy ranking. At number 2, License to Kill, which I give a 5 out of 10, and number 1, The Living Daylights, which I give 8 out of 10. I mean, Dalton was a great Bond. He's a great actor. He was a great Bond, and it's a damn shame that his era was literally cut short by that legal bullshit that happened right after License to Kill was released, and I just think that License to Kill just wasn't the right movie for his Bond. That he needed something a little more fun than License to Kill. I mean, Living Daylights. There's a lot of great fun moments in that one. License to Kill. Yeah, it's not exactly a happy Bond film. License to Kill. It's way dark. Which is not to say I can't appreciate darkness in movies. I appreciate darkness if it's done really well. I mean, all the grittiness in Casino Royale with Daniel Craig makes perfect sense to me, the way they handled that one. But this one, License to Kill, it was just too much, and I think the timing was off, um, and it wasn't much fun. It has its entertaining bits, but just wasn't much fun. Whereas the previous film, Living Daylights, if they had stayed in that mode with Dalton, then maybe Dalton would have proven to be a bit more popular as Bond, and maybe he would have been allowed to stay on. Maybe he would have been able to do a third Bond movie at least. And it's a damn shame he didn't get the chance to do a third one. And then all that legal stuff happened, and basically Dalton ultimately walked away from the part. And well, who can blame him? Because too much time had passed. Um, but very good Bond, very strong Bond. When I rank the Bonds, I probably put Dalton in 5th, just above Lazenby, for no other reason than Dalton only did 2 movies, and he wasn't really allowed to really blossom in the part, so to speak. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, he got to play the part longer than Lazenby did. At least he got to do one more movie. So, but I would have liked to have seen him do 3 movies, 4 movies at least, and it's a shame he only got to do 2. But for what he did, I mean, for the time that he did have as Bond, I thought he was very good. It's just a shame that he wasn't more popular. But what I will say in Dalton's favor is probably safe to say he definitely paved the way for Daniel Craig, for a gritty Bond. Dalton, you could say, was kind of a trailblazer for Daniel Craig's Bond, if you like. So that's certainly a good thing. And again, he was a very good Bond. I mean, he's a great actor besides. And I thought in the role of Bond, he had a lot of presence, a lot of command. He was very suave, very very tough when he needed to be, and when he was allowed humor, which wasn't very much in License to Kill, but when he was allowed humor, he could be pretty funny in a suave kind of way. So he was a very good James Bond, and again, I'm sorry his era was cut short, but at least he got to play the role longer than Lazenby, and he definitely left his mark on the Bond series. And there are indeed 007 fans who will name Timothy Dalton as their favorite James Bond. Not Connery, not Craig, not Moore or Brosnan or Lazenby. They say Dalton is their favorite Bond, and that's fine. That's fine. That's really cool. So he has his share of fans. So thank you, Timothy Dalton, for your 2 James Bond movies. You did a great job, and yeah, thanks, Tim.
Oh, just one more thing. What was your final added up total score from the 2 ratings? Sorry.
Oh, from the 2 films, yeah, 8 out of 10 for Living Daylights, License to Kill 5 out of 10, so that's 13 out of 20, so that's very comfortably over the halfway mark. Again, he's got a great Bond movie with Living Daylights, a not so great Bond movie with License to Kill, but Dalton was certainly great all the way. Again, it's a damn shame his era was cut short, but he was a great Bond for the 2 movies that he had. He was a great Bond. It's just a shame he went out with a not so great Bond movie, but I don't think that was his fault. But overall, very good, very solid James Bond, and I thank Timothy Dalton for his pair of Bond movies.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, that just leaves little old me. Well, Timothy Dalton's era certainly was short but sweet for the most part. It's going to sound kind of weird to say because it's a very mixed bag. There's only 2 films, but yeah, literally, one of the films I like, the other one, take it or leave it. Pretty much. I feel Dalton had a very mixed era, and I don't think I'm the only person to say that. So, but nevertheless, Dalton in the part, well, it's such a shame that his time was cut short. In the role, it would have been lovely to see him do at least one more. I would have liked to have seen him do a 3rd film. There was a rumor that for his 3rd film in 1991, they were going to call it Property of a Lady. I don't know if that was just pure BS, but I heard it somewhere. But it never happened anyway. So yeah, obviously when GoldenEye came about, Dalton was too old. He felt he was too old to do it. So, and he didn't want to do a consecutive amount more movies. He probably knew if he did GoldenEye, it would be his last. But I think he was just happy to settle for the 2 that he'd done already. So yeah, I really like The Living Daylights. Not so keen on License to Kill, but I do appreciate Dalton's contribution to the series, and he was a very good Bond. He's not the best Bond in my opinion, but he does lack the charm and the wit and the humor. Some of his deliveries in those sort of scenes could be awkward, and he wasn't the best with the women. I think maybe he would have got better if he'd have done more films, but nevertheless, for the 2 films he did, I thought he was good. And of course, he did more than Lazenby, so that's something to say. As for my ratings and ranking, well, I rank the movies as they are. So number 2, License to Kill, and I score that one a 6 out of 10. And number 1 is The Living Daylights, scored at 9 out of 10. So same rating as Jack, 15 out of 20 for me. So a very good score, more or less. So his era gets a good mark, but there's only 2 films. So yeah, it's a very short but sweet era. But certainly after Roger Moore, you could tell they were trying to do something different and make a difference to the character. But I think, yeah, his movies were ahead of their time. But at least they paved the way for Daniel Craig, who essentially, I think, succeeded at what Dalton tried to do. So I'm happy in that respect, and I'm happy that now people have earned more of an appreciation for Timothy Dalton. I think he's grown more fans since Craig, actually, which is ironic, because when his films came out, I don't think many people warmed up to him straight away. And again, he was only in the role for 2 films, so they didn't get a long time to really get to know him, which is a shame. But I'll always appreciate Timothy Dalton. And I take him over Lazenby in my ranking of the Bond actors. So, yeah, goodbye, Timothy Dalton. Thanks very much for being James Bond for 2 films. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up. thanks very much, everybody, for watching and listening. And stay tuned next time when we reflect on Pierce Brosnan. Yes, this will be an interesting one. Pierce Brosnan, the fifth actor to play James Bond, and he did double the amount of films. So there'll be 4 movies to talk about next time, which will be interesting. So yeah, thanks very much to Jack and Alan for joining me tonight, and yeah, see you guys all next time for the Pierce Brosnan reflection. So thanks to Sam and Stephen and Harry in the live chat, and until next time, see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.